and gentlemen, let's go. Let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Duggan takes the snap. 3 receivers to his left. Blitz! Sack! Down at the 19-yard line. The tight end out at a wideout on this near side will run it with Robinson, who scored a few moments ago. Shakes and bakes at the 20, at the 15, at the 10, to the 5. Pylon touchdown, left corner. Back-to-back Nats. Perfection wears red and black tonight. 15-0. The Dogs have done it.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a Tuesday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards heading up until 2 o'clock the next 4 hours. We've got you. A lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. We'll talk some NFL football, some college football, college basketball along the way, NFL playoffs, Kansas City Royals baseball, an eclectic show. We head up to 2 o'clock. The program with Soren Petro takes over, and then at 6:30 tonight, a little KU pregame as they get set for Oklahoma tonight at 8 o'clock. So pregame at 6:30. 8 o'clock is when that game will get underway. And so we'll talk maybe some college basketball as we continue rolling here on this Tuesday of the bye week. So Chiefs are going to be off this week with press conferences and everything like that. So we'll continue talking about what's going on around the league and also with the Chiefs. And big news with the Chiefs. And, you know, I was wondering, my first instinct was to talk the entire show about this, but I think that might be a touch overkill, which isn't something we ever want to dabble in. The Chiefs signed John Ross. Do we spend all 4 hours talking about John Ross's impact on this team? The fact that the Chiefs somehow ended up with the number 9 and 10 pick of the 2017 NFL draft?
That's just supreme team building right there.
Do they draft John Ross to give them the inside scoop on the Bengals from 3 years ago?
That's important. You've got to build a breadth of knowledge.
We can't beat this damn Bengals team. What if we grabbed somebody that was on their team a few years ago?
I think that they're going to just try to get the entire first round of that 2017 draft.
Sure.
Mitchell Trubisky could be a backup. That one's easy.
Duh.
Leonard Fournette feels destined to be a Chief in 5 or 6 years from now.
Felt like a couple of years ago people were talking about if he was going to be a Chief. He's out there. Should they go and get him? And then Tampa Bay got him.
That just makes sense. Like once he's 1 degree removed from being kind of washed, the Chiefs will bring him in.
For sure.
Now, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Williams, probably higher asking prices there. But on the other side of their careers, they'll be here.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think they're collecting infinity stones of 2017 first-round draft picks. I'm personally looking forward to the Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt additions.
They are also collecting a 4x100 team.
Well, that might actually be a good idea. This team and speed, I enjoy it.
The 4x4 is going to be run by the Kansas City Chiefs. The Olympics. They will dabble in the Olympics, but also they will play some football with now John Ross and McCole Hardman, Tony, MVS.
It's a reserve futures deal, so this won't impact the playoffs.
Yeah, that's right.
This is a long-term view, everybody. But if I couldn't be excited about the future of wide receivers we haven't seen play, we're going to get a Ross v. Ross like training camp battle next year. Think about that.
More important for the Chiefs, getting McCole Hardman healthy or John Ross being a part of this organization on a reserve futures contract? I feel like it might be the latter. I'm not sure. All right, tongue taken out of cheek.
I'm a little excited about it.
I'm fine. I mean, it's
Come on, Justin Ross versus John Ross in training. Think about how good of a St. Joe story that's going to be.
They are collecting as many fast players as possible.
I support this, generally speaking.
My actual real take and thought and first instinct was, is this insurance for when they cut MVS?
No. This is signing Corey Coleman. This is
just saying.
This is just that.
Just saying. They're already going to lose McCole Hardman. Need somebody to stretch the field when they move on from MVS and save $7 million against the cap instead of paying him, $11 million against the cap.
if you come up with a little prop bet for us on if MVS is on this team next year, I feel like we got to be able to come up with something there. Because I'm leaning the other way. I'm not ready to put my house on it, but I think that they're going to take the stability where they can find it.
I take those $7 million and I put it towards somebody else. You got, we've got $12 million allocated for Juju. I want 19. Okay, bye, MVS. We'll give 19. We'll take your 7 that we're going to save and give it to Juju. And now we got Tony and Sky Moore. And let's see if Justin Ross can come in and fill a role. Not John Ross, but Justin Ross can come in and fill a role with Juju. And those are your 4 guys moving forward. Juju, Tony, Sky Moore, Justin Ross, Justin Watson, and whoever else you might acquire or something like that. That could be a possibility, but we shall see. John Ross, reserve futures contract. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us to be a part of the show.
It was either start there or start with a football game we watched last night.
Both are equally intriguing.
Both have about the same impact on my current day-to-day interest levels.
What is closer to happening? John Ross ever playing a snap for the Chiefs or TCU beating Georgia last night? What has a closer chance of happening?
I told Beards that I watched the entire game except for the very first touchdown. I just got to the TV screen a little late.
Okay.
So I missed the only time that this game was any form of really competitive.
So in your mind, Georgia never even got to 60.
They never, no, in my mind, Georgia never trailed, which might as well have been the truth.
It's 58-7 is this one. So I remember when it was 10-7.
That was fun.
It's a cool game at that point. And that's 10-7. Is there a third down coming up? I don't know. This McConkey guy isn't going to end up with 3 touchdowns. I can tell you that. That ain't going to happen. Maybe other guys, but not McConkey. He's not going to do it. Boy. There's got to be a Hunter Renfrow and a Garrick Dieter on every squad, man. And there's a McConkey. There's one of them everywhere. So I don't know. I think maybe John Ross ever playing a snap he'll come closer to ever playing a snap for the Chiefs than TCU came to beating Georgia last night, because that thing was an embarrassment. A dominant performance by Georgia, and quite frankly, embarrassing by TCU. A great Cinderella fun season that resulted in them going up against Goliath, and David had the little slingshot. And Goliath was, took the rock off the head and was like, really?
And it turned out Goliath was just a tank.
Yeah. Goliath was like, really? That's a slingshot. That's what you're coming with. And a rock.
Someone threw a rock and a slingshot at a helicopter.
This is what you're going to do. Stop throwing the rocks at me. Now you're just pissing me off.
Hey, this is mildly annoying. Quit it.
You're just annoying me now. That might break the skin. All right? This is annoying. So we'll talk about that game. Adam Teicher will join us at 11 o'clock. We'll talk some Chiefs with Adam Teicher, get his thoughts on heading into the bye week, what the Chiefs look like right now, prospects of them winning the Super Bowl, and what he would like to see either continue or improve, what needs to continue for this Chiefs team, what needs to improve for this Chiefs team if they are going to be holding up the Lombardi Trophy in Phoenix. We'll talk with him coming up at 11 o'clock. Opponents he would rather the Chiefs see. At noon, Braden Gall, our college football insider, will talk with him about the game last night, but ultimately moving forward, what Kirby Smart has done, Georgia, the new dynasty, surpassing Alabama. How many championships will Kirby Smart win in his career? Because he's got 2 already, and he might have 3 this time next year. So we'll talk with Braden Gall about that. And then in the 1 o'clock hour, around 1:30 or so, very excited. We're going to be joined by the 18th manager of the Kansas City Royals, Matt Quatraro, will be hanging out with us in studio today around 1:30 or so. So we will talk with the newest skipper for the Royals as they get closer and closer to heading out west to Phoenix for a little spring training opening up. So we'll talk with him about where this Royals organization is right now, what he has seen from the organization since his introductory press conference and early December winter meetings, when he had said he'd had a few conversations with people, like, a brief conversation with Salvi and things like that. More time maybe around the club, around the personnel, around the entire organization, top to bottom, coaching staff in place, a lean towards the pitching side as opposed to maybe equal or hitting for the Royals in the previous years, what that means, and just looking at this club getting ready for his first year as manager. We'll talk with Matt Quatraro coming up at about 1:30 or so. Again, 913-912-4810.
I'd like to ask Teicher, Braden, and Quatraro if the Chiefs could use a first-round draft pick this year for the future rights to Brock Bowers. That was the only thing I could think of watching the game last night frequently was, they have a sophomore alien tight end. He's pretty quick. I wonder if the Chiefs could just move, I don't know, heaven and earth and maybe break some rules. Like him or Marvin Harrison Jr., like those are the couple of guys that I've thought of the last few weeks. I've been like, boy, if we could just figure out how to make that work. Braden and Teicher, could probably speak to that pretty directly. I'm just curious how Matt Quatraro would handle that question.
Matt, would you trade like a second or third rounder this year to get extra picks for next year so you have the ammunition to move up
to go get Brock Bowers? Okay.
It's kind of like the signing pool for the draft.
Exactly.
Only it's dealing with just draft picks. Hey, Matt, lottery. Hate it? Dumb? Stupid? Or the worst thing Major League Baseball has ever done? Would you say the draft lottery is a way to figure out if there is a mass murderer out there, or the dumbest thing Major League Baseball has ever done? If you were to decide between what you think is the most representative
which one of that is
explanation,
more true?
Yeah, for the draft lottery, I guess the dumbest thing. How about that? The dumbest thing Major League Baseball has ever done, the draft lottery. The Royals go from the number 5 pick down to number 8.
Matt, will you guys be tanking for Wembanyama? I just want to know. I just think you got to consider it. I know you're here to win, but look at him shoot.
At number 8, do you take left tackle? Or would you go edge at number 8? Because top 10 is really where you're looking at improving. Look, it's about the line of scrimmage in the top 10.
We'll learn a lot about Matt Quatraro's sense of humor at 1:30 here in the Zone.
It's about the passing game. You either need to pass it, to catch it, to block it, or to sack it, or defend it, or to intercept it. You pass it, you block it.
It sounds like
you sack it.
Twist it, pull it, bop it.
You intercept it.
Intercept it.
Those are the only positions you take in the top 10. Salvi's such a great catcher. Could he be a good holder for the Chiefs?
Wow.
The hand-eye coordination for Salvador
This is
Perez.
a good one. He's already he's got the, you know that he's got the the frame for it, just
absolutely.
Like lower body flexibility and everything. Hand-eye, great hands.
You know how good he would be at catching one that might skip back to him?
Jason, this might be it.
Skip, put it down there, a little spin.
Or should he just be holder?
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about is holding.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, that's all right. No, we're doing a pretty good show over here, Beards.
So mark that for Friday.
Yeah, go ahead and save that one for yourself. Steve Martin, also Prop Comic Beards.
Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that, man.
So Salvador Perez could be the two-sport athlete of our time, Major League catcher, pro holder.
That's right.
I tell you what, I also wouldn't want him to hit me going over the middle. I don't know that he has a lot of experience playing linebacker, so that might put him out of position. But I have to think he'd be a pretty good holder.
One thing, actually, in all seriousness, I do want to ask Matt
I'm at least a little serious about this one.
It has to do with Salvi. That some of the new rules in baseball, and J.J. Piccolo said that he's got an intellectually curious mind, I think was the term that J.J. Piccolo used for Matt Quatraro, and said that a manager, he's got a great feel of where baseball was, where it is, and where it's going. Well, we don't know what it's exactly going to look like with the new rules and the clock and the bigger bases and the shift that's being banned.
I forgot about the bigger bases.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so excited to see slightly bigger bases out there.
I imagine the bases looking like the big hats that people are wearing now compared to what it used to be on the field. Just one huge square block out like a boulder just sitting there at second and third and first base.
The size of a pitcher's mound at each base.
There was in elementary school, there was like a kickball version that we played where it was like those giant like gymnastics pads were a base. You can fit multiple people on them at one time.
That's right.
And so, that's how we'd play occasionally. That's what I'm imagining here, and I think it's great.
Yes.
Like the old Blue Jays base paths, that were just the dirt at the corners.
That's right.
Those are just bases now.
The whole dirt.
You get to the dirt and you are safe.
That's exactly right. It's just the dirt. That's the base paths.
Of course, you got to have like 30 people in the rotation now to accommodate for the fact you can fit like 9 people at a base.
That's a good point.
That will become. It'll be like that one iconic Looney Tunes episode where it's just Bugs Bunny, like 500 Bugs Bunnies playing baseball, moving around the base, one person at a time. That's welcome to Major League Baseball. The game's changing.
So,
thank you, Rob Manfred.
Having an idea of what the future is going to look like can give you a competitive advantage if you have a feeling of what the future holds, how you can take advantage of those new rules. But the shift being banned in that you have to have your feet in the dirt, or at least you can't be on the outfield grass. You can still, on a bunt, be on the grass that's on the side closest to home plate on the infield. But only 2 infielders on each side of the bag. I think it was Fangraphs, put out the hitters that will most benefit from that. Mm-hmm. You would think left-handed hitters all over baseball, right? Left-handed hitters. I think the 5th player he listed that would benefit the most from it, Salvador Perez. Salvi. Because last year, I think the number he used was 76% of Salvador Perez's at-bats. There was a shift to the left side with 3 infielders on the left side of the diamond. 76% of the at-bats for Salvi. 3 infielders on the left side. That they also estimate if he puts the ball in play the exact same way he did last year with no shift, there's 9 more hits for Salvi. Now, does that sound like a lot? Well, let me do. I think it was, I read it. It was at the end of December. I think David Lesky may have done it and said, you take those 9 hits for Salvi, make them all singles. His OPS goes from 750 to 800. Think about that. Just 9 extra hits, so you increase the on-base percentage. The slugging percentage. Average goes from like 260 to 275. Something like that. Just you think it's small, but it can be a big deal because those 9 hits might be with somebody on base, or one of those hits might be leading to a rally, might be a leadoff single or a leadoff double or something that starts a rally that now you get 2-3 runs in an inning when you would have gotten 0. So I thought that was interesting because I just think of I think of Vinny Pasquantino. Mm-hmm. It's the first day. If Royals, who's going to benefit most? Vinny Pasquantino. Well, they say no. It's actually Salvador Perez that will benefit the most for the Royals, since more than 3/4 of the at-bats he saw 3 infielders on the left side of the diamond. So I am curious about what Matt Quatraro thinks the future will look like for Major League Baseball. So we did as much college football talk as was interesting last night about the game. Real quick, and then I do want to get into a little bit more. But is that more Georgia's just overall dominance? Was that game more Georgia? Do we remember that game more for Georgia's dominance or TCU's no-show and just feeling like it was embarrassing and you started to feel bad for them and you just wanted to maybe put them all in the blue tent so that they can just go somewhere and hide? More about Georgia? Do we remember it more for Georgia's dominance, or, oh, God, that was the game where TCU just got beat down from start to finish?
I think and I hope that game is about Georgia because, look, TCU was getting outplayed, outcoached, outworked. What's Survivor? Outwit, outlast. Like anything you want to pick, TCU got out-Georgia'd. No question. But I think what became evident, especially late in that game, was, Georgia's twos might have won this game. And the one thing that I bristled at a little bit, just reading Twitter last night, was the idea that the TCU really was this paper horned frog, if not a paper tiger. And I mean, they looked like it, but they also beat Michigan in the exact type of game you wanted to see them prove themselves in. So I simultaneously think TCU totally earned that spot, got absolutely Washington generaled in the meantime, and that game, again, I hope, will be remembered as, oh God, Georgia, as was, I can't remember which of the guys at the desk said it, straight to Nick Saban's face.
Oh, it was David Pollack.
David Pollack says right past Nick Saban, Georgia's the face of college football. And you find me where that might even have a semblance of being wrong. There are two teams that dominate the sport, but Georgia is 1-1 right now. And we saw a clinic of that last night.
What we saw is a team that was outmanned, that isn't as talented as the team across from them, that isn't as good as the team across from them when you play well below a perfect game.
Yep.
TCU needed to go in there and play a really clean A-plus game, and they turned the ball over 3 times in their first 6 possessions.
Yep.
You're toast.
Yep.
You're toast at that point when you go up against a team like Georgia. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. I want to hear from David Pollack saying that on the set this morning on ESPN, giving his thoughts when he was asked, so what did you think when you were saying that sitting next to Nick Saban?
Good.
And then Kirby Smart's pregame speech was leaked. Have you heard this?
No.
Let me tell you, it took a little while to put this together this morning.
Is this one a cleanup effort for you?
It is as not safe for work as you will hear. That is about a minute long. In this minute,
It's going to sound like a sad fans on Reddit.
I had 20 bleeps in a minute for Kirby Smart pregame speech for Georgia. We'll hear that coming up next as well. More Zone.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I'm just being a smartass.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, and Beards. Let's hear from David Pollack. He was on the set at halftime last night in a game that was over in the second quarter. But at halftime, you still got to talk about the game and what happens moving forward, and the halftime show felt more like the postgame show. Here's David Pollack in Georgia sort of controlling college football. He's sitting next to Nick Saban when he says this, and talking about where Georgia is on the national landscape.
First of all, I didn't even think about who I was sitting next.
Other one. The one that says Georgia controlling college football.
My bad. That was the first one I saw.
Yep. All right.
Georgia, obviously, you've seen in the past couple seasons now, really, they've taken hold of college football. They did an unbelievable job. This is a young football team. This isn't an old football team with a bunch of guys losing. Now, listen, the NFL can take its chunk out of any team, but it's just an unbelievable job of them 2 years in a row now putting the special seasons together.
A lot of people took video and or at least showed the video of Nick Saban's face and focused in on that. And I'm not sure what the reaction was for Nick Saban. He was just sort of there. Was it an uncomfortable Nick Saban? It kind of felt like that at the time. Here is David Pollack this morning on what he was thinking, sitting next to Nick Saban saying that.
First of all, I didn't even think about who I was sitting next to when I said that. It had nothing to do with having Nick next to me, but we're at halftime, and y'all know how this works. We got to talk about something, and it dang sure wasn't the game. The game was over. Everybody knew that in the stadium. Everybody knew that at home, so it was like, man, look at what Georgia's done and the dominance, and then I had nothing to do with taking a shot at Nick. And Nick didn't say a word, and he wasn't upset in the slightest bit. So it was not a shot at Nick Saban.
How many hours do you think David Pollack got of sleep last night? Just play the beginning of that. Just like, oh, here's David Pollack on ESPN this morning.
First of all, I didn't even think about who I was sitting next to when I said that. It had nothing to do with having Nick next to me. But
three. I was thinking 3. Yeah.
3 hours, 4 hours. Good for him, though. It's a national championship game. Go out and enjoy yourself, man. And you know what? He answered the bell. That's what he did. You do that, wake up the next morning, and you're talking college football with the guys and talking about sitting next to Nick Saban saying, Georgia has taken over college football, bar none, present company included. Everybody else is looking up at Georgia. They are smelling their farts because Georgia's in the lead. Nick, your thoughts?
The only thing I really object to there from Pollack is the idea that he would have known if Saban was upset or not.
Right.
He said he didn't say anything. He wasn't upset. No, those are two different things, David.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are two different things. Nick Saban can internalize his rage, I've grown to assume.
Nick Saban was upset. Nick Saban was happy. Nick Saban was excited.
It's the Darth Vader, sure, the mini expressions of Darth Vader, but they're all just Darth Vader.
I actually think of, because my son's got the shirt, Buddy the Elf, with the 15 different expressions of Buddy the Elf, and he's just smiling.
Amazing.
It's the same smile, happy, sad, angry.
I think there's also
excited.
a Star Trek one, Beards. Is there a Star Trek version of that? One of those? Who's the Star Trek one? This is my one place of nerd culture where I really let down. You're in a Star Wars shirt today. I am covering a decent percentage of nerd culture. I just never was a Star Trek guy, so that's why I went Darth Vader. You went Buddy the Elf.
That's right.
That covers most pop culture in general, I think.
Yeah. I'm the dad.
Yeah. All right. Beard's wearing a Star Wars shirt over there.
That's right. Here's Kirk Herbstreit. He was asked last night on SportsCenter that Georgia's in this position, and essentially, how has Georgia got to this point to where they are the kings of college football?
Kirby's made this his own. He's done it his own way in Athens. But I still go back to what he learned when he was with Nick Saban. Nick Saban, since 2009, has been as consistent as any college football coach or NFL coach that you've ever watched for that period of time. And he's the master motivator. In this era of NIL and individuality, I always step back in awe of these guys that year after year find a way to get a group of individuals to come together as a team. And Kirby does that as well. Right now, he probably does it the best of anybody in this sport. And I have such appreciation and admiration for what he's able to do with these individual superstars to get them to buy into that G and the red and the black and the Bulldogs and what this thing means to them collectively. It's hard to do, as we know.
It's easier to do when you've got all the players to get them to buy in because, you know, they are still college kids trying to make it to the NFL, and they've got opportunities to play for national championships, and you'd better be a competitive person to be able to win that spot. I mean, one of the best players on the field last night, outside of, you know, a top 5 pick in Carter, was true freshman Bear Alexander, who, by the way, was the 8th rated recruit in their class this year as a true freshman. Not number 8 in the country. He was the 8th best in their class in the composite rankings.
Georgia's class.
Was a defensive lineman who was pretty dominant, whose name is Bear.
His name is Bear.
Which is pretty badass. And also, by the way, from Texas. Texas A&M, TCU. Got some Texas schools. Oklahoma recruiting into Texas. LSU recruiting, just going a little west of Texas. And he goes to Georgia. It's like, Kirby, you don't have enough in the state of Georgia? Now you got to go to Texas and get a player like that goes and looks like, oh, how are they going to deal without Carter? Oh, Bear. That's how. Kirby Smart, since he took over.
6'3", 300-pound freshman named Bear is how I'm going to go ahead and figure this out.
True freshman who's starting in the national championship game.
Bleep all of you.
Is dominant and getting sacks. And Kirby Smart, in the 6 years of recruiting classes since he took over in 2016, so starting in 2017 to what would be true freshman this year, I almost didn't use the true freshman this year, but the fact that Bear Alexander is out there and some other true freshmen, especially in the game late, when it's like, hey, the second stringers are still scoring and stopping TCU. So for those that talk about stars and recruiting rankings, if they matter, don't matter, blah, blah, blah. In the 6 years for Kirby Smart, according to 24/7 composite rankings, they have averaged in those 6 years the number 2 recruiting class. So you stack number 2 on number 2 on number 2 on number 2 on number 2. That's how you lose 15 players to the draft last year, 5 first-rounders, and you show up in the national championship game, and you still have 66 4- and 5-star players on your team, and TCU has 17. Yeah. They lost 15 guys to the draft, and they still had 50 more 4- and 5-star players on their team on the field. How did they do it? He locked up Georgia. He's recruiting everywhere, and he's a damn fine coach. Mm-hmm. Also, he might get you a little motivated and want to run through a wall for him. Let's go ahead and hear. Earmuff's version is the 20 beeps here. Bleeps. So if you were to open this up at work, you would not want your boss to be walking near you or anybody that would be offended by lots of curse words.
Go ahead and grab that volume knob. Let's crank it to 11.
Yeah. This is the pregame speech for Kirby Smart that was leaked after the game. Not video, just somebody had the audio. Just you can tell like a phone in the background. So it's not like Kirby Smart talking into a microphone. This is pregame in the locker room, cleaned up as best you can.
Your ass is prepared for this for 365 days. I think about the in that locker room. Think about getting our opportunity. All the you went through this week to get ready for this game, now is when you pay the price. You go out there with energy, enthusiasm. Hey, guys, ain't nobody in this room should be cautious. Ain't nobody in this room should be nervous about Go out here and their ass up. Don't think about scoreboard. Don't think about You think about knocking the out. Did you hear what Box said on Monday? When I sat in that meeting, I wanted to go play right then. Do your up out here. 2 years ago, your up. Pride and joy tells me you these guys up. You're going to play the right way. You play the right way. You knock their ass off. You stay off the ground. You tackle the down the ball. It's easy. Look at the right. Punish their ass on offense and kick their ass on special teams, guys. It's about who we are. I believe in you. Let's go.
Surprising they went out and whipped some butt. Holy bleep. I think Kirby Smart might have been able to play defensive tackle in that game last night. My goodness. You're sitting in the locker room and your coach is giving you that. I wonder how often he gives that speech before a game.
Yeah, because you can't do that every week.
No. Is that your like? Did he do that before Missouri? I'd guess not. Hey, guys, come on. Let's play our game. Just play our game. Go out and play our game. Let's go, guys. Here we go. Hey, let's get out there. Let's play a good game. All right, everybody, dogs on 3. 1, 2, 3, dogs. Let's go.
Get out there and execute, play your game, all right?
Here we go, guys. Let's do this. Let's do this, guys. Let's go win the game. Here we go.
All right, fellas.
That was, I'm glad somebody leaked that. And I'm glad, a bleep exists. We can
glad
bleep
somebody
that out.
Snuck in a Nextel walkie-talkie to record that.
That's right.
That's how you know the security there is good, is because somebody was wearing a mic like in a flower, like a
That's right.
like a clown.
Was it Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins over the weekend when the headsets went out, so he's using a walkie-talkie?
Yes.
Did he have to say over when he was?
I think you have to. I think at that point.
Should we go with ace personnel? Over.
Imagine Skylar Thompson, instead of on break, he just goes and copy, and then that's how they know they got the play call in.
10-4 over. Every time they got the play call, he had to say 10-4.
Guys, what's a 10-4? How do I run a 10-4?
I don't know. I think it's just run the damn play, okay?
And a 10-4-40, that's really slow.
That's about what I could do, actually, in Mike
right.
McDaniel's offense. I still think he'd get me a few catches. It's Mike McDaniel.
Georgia is 33-1.
Unbelievable.
In their last 34 football games. They finished the final games of 2020 on a 4-game winning streak. And they have lost one game the last 2 years, 14-1, 15-0, 33-1. Going back to early November of 2020.
How'd they only score 16 points against Kentucky a few weeks ago?
It's a great point.
Not to just give Kentucky defense credit here. I don't know why I felt the need. I'm just looking at Georgia's.
You just
scrolling
right past,
through and
scroll
go
right past the 4-point win against Mizzou.
16. I haven't gotten there yet. I was going newest to oldest in my defense.
Because Mizzou.
I sent you that text last night that I believe that frankly Mizzou deserved a playoff spot.
Mizzou had the second closest margin of defeat to Georgia, which tells me they're the third best team in the country. That's the only way that I can describe it.
At least the third best team in the SEC.
Yet they were still ducking Kansas.
No. I don't think they were.
I'm going to go into the hall until this is over. I don't want to be here for this anymore.
Kind of feel like the bowl advisor said that was baloney.
Bologna?
Baloney. But I guess if one guy said it, it must be true.
Is that one guy Beards?
Nope.
Beards McMurphy?
Brett McFly.
Brett McFly is pretty good.
I like that one.
I like them both.
I like that one. I'm going with hanging the banner for the third best team in the country.
Lost by 4 to Georgia
Hang the banner,
is a banner I think you can hang.
Hang the banner. Bengals fans hang a banner for being 3-0 against the Chiefs. Why can't Mizzou hang a banner with the 4-point loss to Georgia?
What's the Colts one? AFC finalist,
Yes,
I think, is theirs. Mizzou definitely kept it close against Georgia.
Louisville's banner didn't lose in the tournament in 2013. 6-0 and 6 wins in the 2013 NCAA tournament since they had to take the championship one down.
Mizzou was winning that game
Yeah,
until the 4-minute mark.
I
mean, we were up on Georgia for 52 minutes.
Stop the count.
Stop the count. They never trailed in that game until the last 4 minutes. What happened then? Georgia scored in one, I guess. Yeah,
Also aware. I'm also aware of that.
You remember this? You remember this game?
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay, huh?
I remember talking to you on Friday saying, well, I've got other things that I'll probably end up doing, so I'll probably watch the first quarter and a half, but then once it gets out of hand, I can do some other things. And then I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to watch the whole thing. Turns out I knew the result, just didn't know how the painting was going to be finished. I knew what it looked like at the end. We'll take a time out. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling more zone next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. with Jason Anderson.
Tell Jason that he's ducking me.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
How many national championships for Kirby Smart? He's got 2 right now. And Reese Davis last night said, on the stage, he tried to get him to say, like, hey, in wherever the national championship is next year, like, maybe going for 3, and Kirby Smart wouldn't bite. But Reese Davis did say that he got a glimpse of Kirby Smart looking at fans and cheering and everything, and holding the number 1 finger up, and then the number 2, and then held up the number 3.
So good.
And the fans went crazy.
So good.
He's 47 years old. Kirby Smart's 5 years older than me.
Well, it works so well for LeBron.
I'll tell you what.
He got
also,
4 of them.
He's how much? He's 5
Not
years.
in Miami.
He's 47 years old right now.
Which is in your 42.
I am. Yep, that's
I'll
47
tell you what.
minus 5.
I tell you what. You do not look 5 years younger than Kirby Smart. I mean,
you.
this is a compliment to you.
Thank you.
And also as a quick note for what happens when you're a college football coach. You age like a president.
Like the president,
and Kirby Smart is living some rough hours, I bet, doing that. I would have taken the over on 50. Not on championships, not age. For Kirby Smart. I'll take the over on 50.
Under on age. Does he end up with 5?
If he wants to, it kind of feels like that, right? Is that overreacting? Saying 5, 6, 7 sounds crazy when you put it into context of Nick Saban, who owned this. Saying that in past tense is weird.
Mm-hmm.
Who owned this sport so thoroughly.
Nick Saban has 7.
He's got 7.
Does Kirby Smart get to 5?
I think 5. You have to say he's done the hard part. He has the foundation. It's reloading. It's on auto reload now.
Again, they lost 15 guys to the draft. They had this year on their team 66 4- and 5-star players.
He's got it on auto pay.
That's another part of it is the auto pay. NIL, are you going to, I mean, I think they will, but adjusting to the times, he's 47.
Yep.
He's not in the position that Dabo Swinney's in, because I wonder about the future of Clemson with Dabo and the comments he's made over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
If we start paying players, I will quit coaching football.
I keep waiting for him to do that.
Narrator, he is still coaching football.
Is he?
We built our program on NIL, but it's name, image, and likeness of God.
God's name, image, and likeness, baby. Let's say a quick prayer.
I'm not sure what Colin Kaepernick needs or wants. This is what Martin Luther King wanted. The dream is there. What more do you need? If you don't like it, get out of this country. I'm just not sure what Clemson looks like moving forward. I have a pretty good idea of what Georgia's going to look like.
Yeah.
And as long as Nick Saban's at Alabama, I have a pretty good idea of what that's going to look like. But I'd put the over-under at 5.5, I think. Like 4.5, I think I'd take the over.
I think I would too.
Because, again, he's 47. Nick Saban is 71.
Yeah.
24 years age difference with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. How old was Nick Saban when he won his first championship? So he won it in 2003. That would be 19 years ago. He's 71. That would put him at 49.
Wow, yeah. He was older than Kirby Smart was for first 2.
No, that would put him at...
right? I accepted your math. I've made clear this segment math's not my strong suit.
Yeah, no, that would put him at 52. Sorry. At 49. No, 52.
Here's my other question while we're at it.
So Kirby Smart's got 5 years to catch Nick Saban when Nick Saban won his first national championship.
He might have
4
or 5 by then.
I'm guessing he'll have 3 by the time he gets to 52.
Yeah, seems safe.
I mean, this time next year, he might have 3.
When's the next time we're going to see a non-SEC champion again? And then will it just be Clemson? It's just Clemson in the SEC?
Well, I mean, does Jim Harbaugh go to the Broncos or the Panthers or wherever? Does he stay at Michigan? They've got the violations that now the NCAA is looking into. Ryan Day in Ohio State.
Ohio State and Clemson.
I mean, they had a field goal in the air. Didn't have much of a chance, but a field goal in the air to beat this team that won by 60.
It just means
TCU.
more, though.
It does, though.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Adam, your night with Beards and Brisco, if you won the prize that the three of you just get to hang out and do what?
Wow.
Yeah, so many possibilities. So much to do.
How about we can't somebody else win this prize? Why do I have to win this prize?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I will continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco, and Beards. Let's talk some NFL football with our Chiefs insider from ESPN, Adam Teicher, joining us here in the Zone. Adam, how are you, sir?
Good, Jason. How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine. Did you spend much time watching the game last night?
The first half, I gave up on it. I just kind of went out on a limb and figured TCU wasn't coming back in the second half.
Risky proposition, Adam. Risky.
And then I saw the score, and it just kind of the final score, and it validated my my move there.
Yeah, time well spent. Time well spent not watching that game. So yeah. Chiefs will not be playing, so we won't be watching a Chiefs game this weekend. Before we get into the playoffs and looking at this team overall as they begin their quest for Super Bowl championship number 3, what did you make of the performance against the Raiders? How they won the win for this team, getting to 14 wins, the number 1 seed. What'd you take away from how the Chiefs won that game?
Well, that's the game they were been looking for a while, right? I mean, they can't do anything about the quality of opponent that's on the field, on the other side of the field, but they can sure play better, and that's what they did. I mean, it was a pretty complete game, maybe the most complete all the way around when you look at it that way, from start to finish than they had all year, and they certainly cleaned up a lot of these things that. We've been talking about the kicking and the turnovers, and can you trust that though? I mean, is that who the Chiefs are now, or are they going to go back to having some kicking problems once the playoffs start? But this is about as good as you could ask for a season finale, and hey, hats off to the Chiefs for getting it done.
Do you think the Chiefs, that team, not necessarily fans and confidence and concern or anything like that, but do you think the Chiefs themselves needed something like that to go into the postseason, to get the bye coming off a game like that, and not a game like Texans in overtime or struggling against Denver or anything like that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I think you always want to play well, particularly when you're looking at a time of year where maybe momentum counts for something. So there is that, but it's still they got some young guys, but it's still the leaders are a veteran group. They know how to get it done at this time of year. So I don't know necessarily how important that was. So I don't know if that was that big of a deal, but it certainly doesn't hurt. That's for sure.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN, our Chiefs insider right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. And Adam, when we had you on last week and talked about what we thought this game was going to be, you had the Chiefs winning by a touchdown. And then on Friday, we gave our predictions on the show, and a lot of it was the Chiefs are going to be, it's a closer game. The Raiders are going to cover. And that certainly makes sense because that's what we had seen from the Chiefs. Was this one in your mind? Was this more about the Chiefs in how wide the margin was, the Raiders and, nothing to play for, or wanting to keep the Chiefs from getting the 1 seed and Jarrett Stidham and whatever it might be? What was this game more about in the fact that it was that wider margin? They did cover the spread, and it wasn't one of those, it's going to be a closer game and it's going to be kind of annoying that they don't win by more.
No, I think, you look at the Raiders, and you had every reason to believe maybe they were going to play well. I mean, they'd almost beaten the 49ers the week before. So you had every reason to think that they were going to come at the Chiefs with everything they had. And, again, I think we were all maybe factoring in some of these mistakes the Chiefs have been making to help their opponents, whether it's turnovers or missed kicks or whatever. I think we were all factoring that in. So, and we didn't get any of that. So we got the game that we got. And, the Raiders, I can't, it's hard to tell just by watching it live whether they're giving full effort or not. It sure looked like it to me. They just were playing a better team and got beat. So, that was just a case of, the Chiefs are the better team, and when they play their game, there's going to be a lot of teams in the league who have trouble keeping up. We just have not seen that kind of game from the Chiefs for quite some time.
Yeah, one of the perplexing things is how good this team is offensively. And a year ago, we discussed, Adam, a lot that, okay, the Chiefs got off to a quick start, and then you felt like, all right, the offense is back. And then they went into a lull in that game. And so often the Chiefs' first drive of the game resulted in a touchdown, and then it was like, 4 or 5, 6 drives later before they put any more points on the board. That was a constant conversation we were having is why can the Chiefs, the scripted plays, are they scoring, but then not after that? This year, it hasn't been that going into the Raiders game, they had only scored on 3 opening drive touchdowns, or they only had touchdowns on 3 opening drives this year in games for the Chiefs. They do that against the Raiders. They score on 4 of their first 5 possessions in the first half. 3 of their first 4 were touchdowns. Anything to glean from this season that, it's sort of the opposite of, they're putting points on the board as the number 1 offense, but they aren't starting as fast as they did a year ago, but then the engine sort of broke down for a while last year, that it's been the exact opposite, still number 1 offense. But against the Raiders, they went out there and, 4 out of 5 possessions, they put points on the board. 3 out of 4 were touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't know what to attribute that to. It is dramatically different than it was last year. But hey, they're ending up in the same place, and that's what you want. And certainly, I think if I would have been surprised to hear that the Chiefs led the league in scoring. Before this season started, if you were to tell me the Chiefs were going to lead the league in scoring, I'd be like, I think you're wrong about that. I can't see that happening. So this has been. Quite the season for them offensively, and you have reason to believe the Chiefs are going to put up a big number no matter who they play against in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting. It's the defense that I'm just. There's some contradictory numbers there that you just don't seem to add up on defense, and you just sort of wondering what you're going to get every week with that group.
In what way? The contradictory numbers. What are you looking at and seeing that?
Well, I was kind of surprised. I was surprised to see this. The Chiefs finished 11th in the league in yards allowed, and that's a lot higher than maybe I figured they would be. I was figured they were somewhere close to 20. I really hadn't looked at that. That's not to me necessarily a telling stat, but still. 11th in the league is pretty good, and they allowed fewer yards than they've allowed in a season. The Chiefs did, and I think it's 15 years since they've allowed fewer yards than this. And this was in a 17-game season, which is a relatively new concept. They're rushing the quarterback and doing a great job there, but some of the other numbers aren't great. They're still allowing a decent number of points. Now they didn't on Saturday in Vegas, but. They're still, 15 to 20, somewhere in that range in where they are in points allowed. And, they're not great in the red zone or after turnovers or things like that. So you just wonder. I can't put my finger on what the Chiefs are defensively. They do rush the quarterback. I mean, that's one thing they do. But I feel like the results should be better for a team that rushes the quarterback the way they do. They should be a better team all around defensively because of that, and that's only seeming to carry them so far.
Yeah, it sort of feels like I think the number a few weeks ago was when the Chiefs did not pressure the quarterback. They were dead last in quarterback rating of all teams that did not, on plays in which the quarterback did not receive a pressure. So that isn't just, when they're not pressuring, their QBR is dead last compared to every other team that pressures and doesn't pressure. No, it's all across the board. It's just they're not getting enough of the back end when they are not pressuring the quarterback. But they've been able to do that, and they've got the 55 sacks this year, which is roughly 23 more than I thought they would get. I thought they would be at like 32, 33, and they ended up with 55. And it's an interesting point about, typically the turnovers come along with that. You're sacking the quarterback, you're getting after that, you're forcing bad throws, you're intercepting the ball, you're getting fumbles, you're recovering those, you're getting turnovers, you're getting the ball back to the offense. They've been better at, causing turnovers over the last, 4 or 5 weeks or so. But you're right, like that 55 sack number is one of the bigger surprises of the entire team. It's not resulting in a lot of turnovers, but there are some contradictory sort of views of this team that you see one thing and you think it should result in this, but then something else is going on. Is that maybe the back end of the secondary of the defense that is slowly progressing and getting better and better? You hope, and Josh Williams and Jalen Watson and guys that are trying to get more experience, and Brian Cook, that as they get better, that if you're able to sack the quarterback, that you're able to do those things, that, they are going to be a little bit better in keeping whether it be the middle of the field covered a little bit more or the 10-plus air yards passes in which they are pretty dreadful at?
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't add up, and some of those stats you talk about there, that's pretty contradictory. I haven't looked it up, but I would think that the other teams that rush the quarterback really well in the league, like Dallas and Philadelphia, for instance, I would think they're very high in those areas. So, and the Chiefs continue to, it wasn't such a problem in Vegas, but they're just not very good in the red zone, and that's on defense, they're not very good in the red zone, and that's the area of losing teams. I mean, the Chiefs are second from the bottom in red zone defense, and the other five of the other bottom six are teams that aren't in the playoffs. Tampa is one that's down there. That's the next one. So the Chiefs are hanging out with some bad teams in some areas, and that's the thing that you wonder about a little bit, and the turnover thing was certainly a problem. They were hanging out with bad teams in the turnover differential. Now, it wasn't a problem in Las Vegas, but does that mean it won't be in the playoffs? So I just wonder a little bit. There's some things here that just don't. That's why I say there's some things here that just don't add up. And if they could do these things a little better, how good would they be? But right now, they're just not there in certain areas and certain areas of the field. And by the end zone, that's one of them for sure.
So there's one number here out of these five that sticks out: 5, 22, 1, 3, 8. Those are the top 5 in sacks, and that's where they rank in turnovers or takeaways on defense. 5, 22nd, 1st, 3rd, 8th. So which one of these is not like the other? It's the Chiefs that are second in sacks, but 22nd in the league in takeaways, and the others that are around them are 5th, 1st, 3rd, and 8th. So I don't know. Maybe it's a football thing where the ball's bouncing the different way. They're just sacking the quarterback in a way that the ball's not coming out. They did get that a couple of weeks ago, and they're getting more turnovers now as of late. So maybe that is going to be something that starts to generate and be something that they get more and more. I mean, Justin Reed talked about it, that it's, that maybe they come in bunches. And that would be great. If this was the time of the year when they start turning teams over and they stop turning the ball over, then, we'll see you in Phoenix.
Yeah. And, you can look at other stats like QBR, opponent QBR. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Chiefs are only one of the worst 8 teams in QBR in the league. Chiefs are only one of 2 playoff teams, and Minnesota, which is, I don't know what to make of that team either, although I certainly can't trust them. That's the other team. So they're just hanging out with a bunch of losing teams, and you just wonder. I can't put my finger on what's going on with this team defensively and where they're going to be from week to week. I don't care who they play in the divisional round in a couple of weeks. You just wonder, how are they going to match up with this team, and what are they going to bring to the table defensively? And so it's just, to me, I feel like just about every concern you might have with this team, hey, throwing the special team stuff out of it for a second, but if you're talking about offense and defense, I think about every concern you might have is on the other side of the ball. It's on defense.
And the one thing that kind of sticks out with QBR to me is, when I look at the teams around the Chiefs and, how many interceptions they have this year on defense, and I start to think back and, I can think of 5 off the top of my head of interceptions for the Chiefs that weren't interceptions, that should have been either an easy catch or an unfortunate penalty that took an interception away from the Chiefs. The 2 Juan Thornhill interceptions that were taken away by hands to the face with Snead and then Joshua Williams, that hand just got a little bit in the wrong spot. Did it affect the play? No, not really. No, didn't affect the play, but the interception taken off the board. McDuffie has dropped 2 of them that were right to him. There's 4, and then I think it was Willie Gay that had one that was dropped, or was somebody else. I can't remember who it was. That's off the top of my head. I can picture it, but I can't picture the player. I mean, that's just 5 right there, and you're not going to simply catch every single one. You're not going to do that every single time, but the hand a little bit lower on DK Metcalf, the hand a little bit lower on, I believe it was Cortland Sutton, and the Chiefs have 13 interceptions this year. McDuffie catches the 2 that are thrown right to him. The Chiefs have 15 interceptions this year, which would put them in the top 10 of interceptions. You add 5 more, what does that QBR look like for the defense? Yeah. But that's part of what Steve Spagnuolo was saying is like, hey, we got to intercept the ball. So when it's thrown to you, do it. Catch it, make sure you get it.
And who knows? Maybe they will in the playoffs, and this thing will turn around a little bit. And this thing will look a lot better. But right now, it's just, I just, the way things are, I just, hey, they're doing some things really well on defense, but it just doesn't add up. It just, are they as good as they should be given some of these things they're doing well? And to me, the answer is an unqualified no. It doesn't. They're not as good as they should be given how they rush the quarterback and do certain other things well.
What's Adam Teicher's our guest. What's a bigger surprise as they get ready for the playoffs here, that they do have the number 1 offense when they retooled a little bit in the offseason, or the fact that they were second in sacks this year with 55? What was a bigger surprise if I told you one of those things would happen before the season?
No, I would have been surprised by both, and I wouldn't have believed you either way. But I think the sacks, I can't imagine how they took a big jump. Karlaftis certainly came along the second half of the season, and Carlos Dunlap had a nice, productive first half of the season. So, they do have some personnel they didn't have, but I didn't expect this. I didn't expect a huge jump from Chris Jones in how he's playing and how he's producing, and Mike Dana, a guy like that. And particularly if you told me Frank Clark was only going to have a few sacks this year, I would have said, okay, that's, they're never going to make that jump, but they have, and that's something nice to have in your pocket going into the playoffs, no doubt about it.
What have you seen from Karlaftis as to this change for him that, we talked a number of weeks that, hey, he's pressuring he's getting these, credits for these pressures, and he and Aiden Hutchinson are pressuring the quarterback out of rookies, but Hutchinson has all these sacks that are more than Karlaftis, a higher number of the counting stats for Karlaftis in sacks, and now he's got, 5.5 in his last 7 games, which, if you pace that over a season, it's just, the 7 games for him, but over a season, that would be roughly 13.5 sacks for George Karlaftis. If he plays over the course of the season what he's done the last 7 games, would be about 13.5 sacks, which is right around what Chris Jones has done this year. So that's how good Karlaftis has been. What's been the difference in your mind for Karlaftis in actually getting the quarterback down or getting there and getting the credit for the sacks?
Yeah, he's certainly played better. I mean, he's just finishing better, and I think he's getting more opportunities. I have not looked this part up, but on passing downs, I'm guessing he's playing more now the last half of the season than he did the first half of the season, when maybe they were using a guy like Dunlap with Frank Clark on the edge, or they were mixing it up a little bit. Now he's playing a little more, and I think it's a testament to his development here, that what's going on. So certainly going into the playoffs on a hot streak, and that's a great thing for him. He and Chris Jones both playing pretty well.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN, our Chiefs insider. What did you think of Snow Globe, Arctic Circle, Ring Around the Rosie, Roulette Wheel, whatever is the actual name for that one, and the reindeer personnel? But what did you make of that play for the Chiefs and when you saw it happening?
I thought it was hilarious when I saw them spinning around like that. I don't. Did they show that on TV before the play started?
They did not.
It was fun. I was just laughing. I mean, like, what are they doing here? And then you could see as soon as they got out, they broke the huddle, they sprinted to their respective positions. You're like, okay, I get it now. They're certainly trying to trick the Raiders, and I think it's funny, the comment from one of the Broncos linemen, that's disrespectful to the Raiders. I don't get it. I mean, what were the Chiefs supposed to do? Come out and tell the Raiders, okay, here's our play, here's who you want to cover, here's the progression that Mahomes is going to go through, and what were they supposed to do? I don't get that. I don't think that would have been disrespectful if the Raiders had done it. So I'd laugh if the Raiders had done it. I mean, I just think it's it's fun. That's what we're supposed to be out here for, right?
The TV broadcast actually was showing the guys in the booth while they were spinning, and while they were talking, you see Louis Riddick just point down to the field. So I knew something was going on, and so he points down to the field, and when they cut back, you can see the Chiefs rushing to the line of scrimmage. I'm like, oh, he's pointing and saying, hey, they're hurrying up to the line of scrimmage. They're going to run this play. And look, Mahomes is in, behind Jerick McKinnon, who's taking the direct snap. I didn't know he was pointing that they were doing a spin at that time until they showed the replay because they had the view of the booth. So Louis Riddick, I mean, he's like, hey, something's going on down there. I thought it was hilarious, and it also wasn't a holding call, so it should have been a touchdown. And that's been one of the interesting, I think, takeaways from that particular play is sort of the reaction from people around the league. The unwritten rule guy that's coming out everywhere. Quinn Miners that came out. It was so disrespectful what they did to the Raiders. Like, what's the line between disrespectful and fun? Because when you intercept a quarterback, the entire defense runs the length of the field and lays down in the end zone and does all these crazy celebrations. You see other teams against the Miami Dolphins, when they score or do something good, they do the waddle, which is making fun of Jalen Waddle. Seems pretty disrespectful to me. What's the line of disrespectful and then just fun? Like, I think the line is, if you like the team, it's fun. If you don't like the team, it's disrespectful. There's your line.
Well, maybe that's what it is. I mean, I don't find that disrespectful at all. Matter of fact, I don't find a team like, you remember the Chiefs, the game ended with the Chiefs down near the Raiders goal line. Yeah. Is it disrespectful? I know that's the unwritten rule, that it's disrespectful. You don't score in that situation when you're up by 3 touchdowns. But I don't have a problem with that if they do. I mean, this is pro football. You stop them if you don't like it, that they're going to try to score there, And so I don't even think that's disrespectful. Now, if you get Alabama playing Vanderbilt and Alabama's on the 5-yard line at the end of the game, don't score. That's not a level playing field. But don't tell me that if I was playing for the Raiders, I'd be more disrespected that they took a knee rather than they tried to score. I'm like, you're having pity on me here. Don't do that. I don't like this. So you're right. It is in the eye of the beholder. I just don't think. I can't imagine that that's going to be a prevalent thought around the league, is that the Chiefs are being disrespectful here, because it was fun, and it's part of the deal. Part of the deal is you're trying to trick your opponents, and I feel like that's one of the reasons that play worked, is the Raiders had no idea what was coming here.
Yeah, the part about it is, like, nobody acknowledges that the Chiefs did take a knee at the end of the game. Like, if they wanted to really be disrespectful against the Raiders, they could have continued to score. It's also pretty disrespectful if you come out and dance on the other team's midfield logo. Is that viewed as disrespectful, or just getting your team pumped up and ready to go? Victory laps around the stadium in a bus because of some smart aleck bus driver. Is that disrespectful? Like, it's all of that stuff. Also, I think that as teams become more successful, the novelty and newness of that team and sort of the different things they're doing and how fun it might be starts to wear down. And we like new things and to build them up, and then as we've seen it over and over, we then like to tear it down and find the next new thing. Because in the Super Bowl, people had fun with Rose Bowl and the little pirouette and spinning, and I didn't really hear many players going how disrespectful they were against the 49ers by doing that in the Super Bowl of all places, the sacred ground of playing in the Super Bowl. And the Chiefs went and Harlem Globetrotted it up and did something like that. It's disrespectful. Now the Chiefs are playing in the Super Bowl for the first time, in 50 years, and they were doing something fun, and it's, Mahomes is the reigning MVP and all of that stuff, and hey, this is cool, this is fun, this is new. And now it's disrespectful and hateful, and it's a classless organization, and people are tired of the Chiefs, and people rallying Bengals and Bills fans before Damar Hamlin's injury collectively at the stadium chanting "F the Chiefs." I mean, it's interesting what's going on over the last few years.
Yeah, no, there's no difference to me in what the Chiefs did in the Super Bowl a few years ago and then this. I mean, it's the same deal. I don't recall anybody calling it disrespectful then. So, and hey, for what it's worth, I thought the Raiders, the victory lap was funny. I mean, I thought
did too. Yeah.
I mean, I was at Arrowhead that day, and I've never seen. I'm looking out on kind of the north side of the stadium there, and I've never seen. I figured when I saw the Raiders buses, I'm thinking, well, he must have got lost somehow getting out of Arrowhead. I'm seriously, that's what I thought it was at the time, and it came out that later on that that's what they were doing, taking a victory lap. And I'm like, oh, okay, and I got a good laugh out of it. So clearly the Chiefs didn't take it that way. I mean, Andy Reid was clearly mad about it. You remember the way he was talking about it. When the Chiefs played the Raiders the next time around, but I thought that was funny too. And hey, do what you need to do. I mean, that was good stuff.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. I want to look at this Chiefs team heading into the postseason. Adam, the places that there's confidence, what they need to continue doing, what they need to improve on, and then talk a little bit about the decision from the NFL and the neutral site with Chiefs and Bills and where that could be. We'll find out all of that stuff. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling with Adam Teicher, Chiefs Insider from ESPN.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Let's talk some Kansas City Chiefs football, some NFL football with Adam Teicher, our Chiefs insider from ESPN. Adam, how are you, sir?
Good, Seren. How you doing? Or Seren. Sorry to insult you that way, Jason. I am sorry to insult you that way. That'll never happen again.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a little baseball breaking news, everybody. A little baseball breaking news. Carlos Correa and the Minnesota Twins are finalizing a 6-year, $200 million contract. Pending physical.
Pending the physical.
Because on December 14th of 2022, Carlos Correa agreed to a 13-year, $350 million deal with the Giants. Voided because of failed physical. Then a week later, on December 21st, he agreed to a 12-year deal for $315 million to the Mets, which was voided by a failed physical. And now he's agreed to a 6-year, so 13 to 12 to 6, for $200 million pending a physical. But this is with the team that he played for last year. So do they have more of an idea of what that physical is going to show? And they're more willing to then go with the 6 years, $200 million, as opposed to the Giants are like, yeah, we ain't signing $13 million with that physical, or 13 years. Yeah, we're not signing 12 years if you're the Mets with that physical. Twins, we'll get him for 6. We'll take him 6 more years.
In the last month, Carlos Correa has agreed to $865 million worth of contracts. 200 of it's actually going to cash out for him. Could get up to 270.
Maybe. Pending physical.
Pending physical. Nearly $900 million has been attached to his name from 3 different teams this offseason.
Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. Roughly the same contract as he covers the Chiefs.
Pending physical.
Pending physical. That's right. Pending a physical from Adam Teicher. You know what? I would do whatever it takes to pass a physical if it was 6 years, $200 million. Like, Jason, need to pass a physical. Do what it takes. Bionic, I don't care. $1 million man, we can rebuild him. We've got the technology. Let's do it. Adam, this Chiefs team rebuilt a little bit in the offseason, and now they head into the postseason. Let's look at the pro and the con, or the good and the needs improvement. If you're looking at this team and you're saying they win a Super Bowl, they need to continue this. Like this, whatever it is, can't take a step back or be lesser than what we've seen on a consistent basis with this team. What would it be for this team that they just need to keep doing what they've been doing, that no changes really need to be made?
Well, to me, it's just play a clean game, Get rid of this stuff that's been a problem for most of the last few weeks, better ball security and particularly make your kicks and clean up the penalties, which they've largely done. So I feel like if the Chiefs play their game, they're going to be hard to beat, particularly when the game's at Arrowhead. There's some good teams they're going to be playing here coming up. There's no doubt about that. I think if the Chargers win on Sunday, this might be the best Final Four in the AFC that there's been in a long time. 4 really good teams with 4 excellent quarterbacks. So I think it's going to be a great Final Four if that's what happens. And, of course, the Bills and the Bengals win this weekend, too. But I just feel like the Chiefs are that good. I mean, I feel like they've got that much going for them that on a down-to-down basis, if they're not helping their opponents out, they're going to be a tough out. And, we were talking about all these problems the Chiefs were having over the last few weeks. I still, even despite that, this was going into the Raiders game. I just don't feel like there was anybody out there that was looking to play the Chiefs in the playoffs and figured, oh yeah, this is good for us. I mean, they're going to be a tough out, and if they play their game, but we don't know that they're going to because it's been kind of spotty the last few weeks.
What's the biggest cause for concern or gives you pause for this team heading into the postseason that they need to clean up? That's a worry for you.
Well, to me, again, it's some of the things we've seen, and I don't know that the kicking game is all good now. I just they had a nice game the other day, all 4 PATs and a 44-yard field goal, and that's great. But does that mean that things look going forward or have been fixed, and that this is not going to be a problem going into the playoffs? I don't know. I mean, if they have some of these games, if they have, some of these games where they've had kicking problems, if they have that in the playoffs, in a close game against the Bills or the Bengals or the Chargers, what's that going to look like? Can the Chiefs overcome that? I feel like they've done a nice job overcoming it against inferior opponents, but can you do that against a great team? So just don't bleed points. Don't give away points by missing kicks like that, because the opponents haven't been doing that. The opponents have missed 2 field goals against the Chiefs all year long and no PATs. They have not been having problems. But the Chiefs have, and some of that goes back to when Butker was out of the lineup, but some of it has been since he's been back. So, to me, that's the one thing that could take him down, that has the real possibility of taking him down in the playoffs.
Adam Teicher is our guest. What did you make of the decision to go neutral site in the AFC Championship game? Now we know with Buffalo beating the Patriots, if it is Chiefs and Bills, it'll be on a neutral site. What'd you make of that decision as opposed to just winning percentage, here are the seeds, and this is what we do in the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm okay with it, because I'm of the mind that once you decided you weren't going to make up that Cincinnati-Buffalo game, that this wasn't going to be fair to somebody. And everybody got some things they would not like out of this deal. Cincinnati got it taken out of their control to get the 2nd seed, and they certainly needed they couldn't just control that. They also needed a Chiefs loss, which didn't happen. But they could have gotten the 1 seed when that game was canceled. So Cincinnati didn't get a great deal out of this. Buffalo got their own control over getting the number 1 seed taken away from them. They got it worst of anybody, I think. That's a big deal, getting that first round bye, and Buffalo had that taken away from them. Now the Chiefs, might have to play the AFC Championship game if it's against the Bills on a neutral site, but they still came away with a great prize here. I mean, they were given control of the number 1 seed. All they had to do was beat the Raiders. So I feel like the Chiefs came out of this better than any of those other 2 teams. So it's not perfect, but it's not like they're having to go to Buffalo to play the game. That would be a different story. But if they're going to play in Atlanta or someplace like that, I'm not a fan of it, but I feel like everybody else got something they didn't like out of this deal too.
The one thing that is kind of confusing is sort of a little picking and choosing for the NFL. So they use winning percentage to go with the seeds, but then even if winning percentage, if the Bengals would have lost to the Ravens, then the winning percentage would not have mattered. They would have coin flipped for Ravens and Bengals where that game would have been played, even though the Bengals had a higher winning percentage than the Ravens. So therefore they're saying, I don't know that we need to give that one team or another the direct home field advantage. We'll just do a coin flip here. Chiefs winning percentage is better than the Bills, but they're saying, we want to do neutral site because it may not be fair for one team winning percentage. Bills have a better winning percentage than the Bengals, but they didn't get a chance to play. So if Cincinnati would have won that game, they would be the 2 seed, and Buffalo would have to go to Cincinnati. But they're not doing coin flip or neutral site for that one. They're just simply saying winning percentage. Sorry, Cincinnati, you got to go to Buffalo. That's one of my beefs. Is like they're picking and choosing depending on what the scenario is. Of no, this is straight winning percentage. Now we need to interject here a little bit because it may not be fair to this team or that team based on winning percentage.
Yeah, I don't think this was a great plan. I don't have a better one if you are not going to make up the game, other than just play it out strictly by winning percentage. Yeah. And the Chiefs are the number 1 seed because they have a better record than the other 2, and that's how you're doing this. But it really is not a great scenario. And the only way to make it fair is to play the game. Other than that, you knew somebody was going to take it, and all 3 teams have this. But I still feel like the Chiefs came out on the best end of this deal because they don't have to play this week. Yep. They're winning a playoff game without even playing, and to me, that's the biggest advantage of the number 1 seed now. That only 1 team gets it is that's bigger than playing the home field advantage thing. That's getting that first round bye is huge. And you remember there was that thing thrown out there that maybe they give the number 1 seed the choice of either the first round bye or home field advantage. but the number 2 seed could pick the other one. Well, if you're the Chiefs or any other team, there's no choice there. Everybody's going to take the first round bye. I mean, that's not even a question.
Yeah, and it's not like they have to play on the road to get to the Super Bowl. At worst, they'll play a neutral site to get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And with the bye week as well. Have you heard of any sites, locations that AFC Championship game might be potentially if it is Chiefs and Bills?
Well, they were talking about Vegas when I was there over the weekend. They were talking about maybe the game being played in Vegas, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me to ask fans of Buffalo and even of Kansas City to get on a plane and go all the way across the country and play it there. I feel like there's got to be a place that's a little more close to both, whether it's Atlanta or someplace like that. So, but Vegas seemed to have some momentum, but I can't imagine the league would put it there.
Well, we had your colleague at ESPN, Field Yates, on yesterday, and essentially saying, I can't really say some of the sites that are being discussed, but, quote, think outside the box is what he said for some of these sites. And I thought that was interesting because to me that kind of eliminates, Indianapolis had already been talked about as being eliminated, but kind of eliminates Vegas. I don't know if outside the box means, they were talking this morning, does that mean like a college venue? Is like going to Knoxville and playing in a stadium of 100,000 fans that won't be used and won't be needed, and kind of a middle ground, and maybe the weather could be okay, that day, as opposed to playing like in the north. Does it have to be a dome? Like, I just thought it was interesting, like when he said, think outside the box of the locations that they are discussing right now.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine the Chiefs would go to a non-NFL venue.
Yeah, I would agree.
That, to me, makes no sense at all. You have no idea what shape the field is in. What is really their ability to put on a game at kind of the last minute with 100,000 fans or whatever it's going to be. So I can't imagine it's going to be that. Maybe it'll be everybody's talking about places with domes. Maybe it'll be an outdoor type place, but maybe it'll be an outdoor stadium. They'll play it in Chicago or someplace like that. But certainly playing it in a non-NFL arena makes zero sense.
I still say,
which doesn't mean the NFL won't do it.
That's a good point. Yes, I still say if you want to make all parties involved happy, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, play that neutral site in Cincinnati, so therefore Cincinnati still gets an AFC Championship game, and it's neutral site, so there's no home team. So there you go. We figured it all out. Just play that thing in Cincinnati for the AFC Championship game. Done.
Yeah, there'll be a town very welcoming for that game, no doubt about it. They'll love having that game in Cincinnati, no doubt.
Who do you think the Chiefs play next week? If you're guessing from all the games this weekend, who do you think the opponent's going to be when we talk next Tuesday?
Well, it's going to be the Chargers, I think. I mean, I give Miami and Baltimore very little chance of winning their games. And so it comes down to the Chargers and the Jaguars, and I just think the Chargers are a better team. Jacksonville's a little too up and down for my taste. They've done some nice things this year, and then they've just completely laid an egg, and including the game at Arrowhead when they were +3 and still weren't really competitive when they were here a couple months ago. So I like the Chargers. I think they're the better team. So I think it'll be Chiefs and Chargers in the divisional round in a couple weeks.
All right, we'll see what happens. Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Adam, you're the man. Really appreciate the time, sir. Enjoy the off week and the football, and we will talk next week.
Good stuff, Jason. We'll talk to you then.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher from ESPN, our Chiefs Insider, joining us here on Sports Radio 810 WHB in the Zone. He thinks it's going to be Chargers and Chiefs next Saturday or Sunday. So, we will find out what the opponent is going to be, but we won't know until all 3 AFC games are done. Shouldn't say that. If the Bills win, we won't know until the end of Ravens and Bengals. If the Bills lose, we know who the Chiefs' opponent will be, and that will be the Dolphins. But barring that, we won't know who the opponent's going to be until Ravens and Bengals are done. More than likely going to be the winner of that game on Saturday night. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. More Zone next.
You're in the Zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. You're in the zone.
Perfect sports radio right there. That's great. It's awesome. Worst thing ever. Dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
With Jason Anderson.
I kind of agree with both.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thank you, Adam Teicher, Chiefs Insider from ESPN. We haven't played the sound from Quinn Miners yet.
More like Quinn Whiners.
Am I right?
Hello!
Broncos country. Let's cry.
Let's whine.
And dine.
And then?
And 3 and 9.
Go 3 and 9. That's pretty good. I like
Wine
that.
and dine and 3 and 9.
Did they actually go 3 and 9?
What
Let me
about
find
those
out
other
here.
5 games? Well, don't worry about it.
That's pretty funny. I like that.
We'll talk with Braden Gall coming up at noon. He is our college football insider. ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports.
They absolutely, not only did they go 3 and 9, I think they went 3 and 10, but they were 3 and 9 at one point. I think they were 3 and 9 entering the first Chiefs game.
Yes. All right.
Wow, that's great. Wine and ride.
Ride and wine and 3 and 9.
I just saw this quote from Russell Wilson. Did you see this? After Broncos QB Russell Wilson after 5-12 season. Quote,
I would never spin around like that in a huddle.
Quote, I fell short. I read it the first time. I thought it said feel. Smaller in stature compared to other
He is, yeah.
quarterbacks. Maybe they get Cliff Kingsbury in there to figure out how to work with the shorter quarterback.
Yeah.
That could really turn them around. I think they should look into that.
What could go wrong?
Couldn't be worse.
Cliff Kingsbury got a pretty good job after not going to bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't he get another job after not going to playoffs?
I think this is just continuing to fall up.
What's wrong with that?
If Cliff Kingsbury works next year, he should fire his family for letting him do that. Go live on a beach, Cliff.
Please.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
From 12 to 12:20 when we talk to you on Tuesdays during the football season, but now forever, in perpetuity moving forward. So over the summer, whatever it might be, we'll just have this ready to go.
Nobody cares.
So
12:20, that's cute. I like that.
Yeah, that was weirdly specific and wrong.
I thought that was fun. I said, you know what number am I going to go with? I'll go with 12:20. It is cute, isn't it?
That's one question for you, man. What are you talking about?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards. It's the Zone on this Tuesday. A victory Tuesday for Georgia. Bye week Tuesday for the Chiefs. Getting ready for the winner of Jags and Chargers, more than likely. Unless an upset happens with the Dolphins or the Ravens. No upset last night, except for viewers that were upset that thing got pretty bad pretty quickly. Joining us now from ESPN Radio and Athlon Sports, 440 Podcast Network, Fringe Element Football Show. It is our college football insider, Braden Gall, joining us here in the Zone. Braden, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We are doing just fine. So that game last night, it did happen. They played it. At least one team played. We joked about it last week.
I think two teams played.
Did they? The first and second string for Georgia?
Yeah, well, I think this listen, I'm assuming we don't need to discuss the game itself. Like, they really utilized Brock Bowers really well, and the pressure for Georgia's true freshman third string defensive line was excellent. Like, it's not. We don't need to talk about that, but I do think there's a few important points, which is that TCU was on the field. They played, they didn't play one of their best games, obviously, but I think that says, okay, let's take 20 points off the board for Georgia. 45-7 still feels right. I think 38-10 was my pick. That just happened in the first half. I think the key is that we shouldn't change our opinion of TCU. Like, if you want to drop them in some postseason ranking poll that doesn't mean anything, fine. Like, we can do that, and we can say, all right, do I think Ohio State would have been better, or Alabama's better, or Tennessee's better, or Michigan's better? We can have that debate. I do think those 5 teams, 2 through 6 in the rankings, are fascinating to try to discuss. That's like a totally separate conversation in my mind. I think one of the most important things coming out of last night was that we should not change our opinions on TCU. Like, the story, the journey, the first-year head coach, like everything that they accomplished, all the great games and the drama and the win over Michigan, the first Big 12 team to win a playoff game and get to the national championship game in the playoff era. The first team from Texas to do that before A&M or Baylor or Texas Tech or anybody else. I think there's just a lot there that doesn't change because you weren't as good as Georgia. I just don't think that's the right way to look at it. So I know we kind of joke about, who was there on the field, how many teams played. Well, no, that's TCU.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, just because they're as bad as they were last night against clearly the best team of this season and frankly of the last 5 or 6 seasons, because they should have 3 rings, frankly, if not for Nick Saban's move to go to 2 at halftime in 2017. They would have their 3rd national championship. Nobody's ever done 29-1 in 2 years. It's unprecedented. So I don't really rip on TCU. I know that sounds weird, but I just think the story's still great. Max Duggan's still great, a great story. Sonny Dykes, a great story. The way TCU fans enjoyed the season and the drama of the games, all of it is great. And even getting there is almost unprecedented. So I think none of that. I think last night I spent most of the night thinking this doesn't change anything for me on how I view TCU. What it does is it puts Georgia maybe up a slight. I think there was a lot of talk from a lot of fans that don't like the SEC, that thought that Georgia was getting unfair bump in the polls or SEC bias in our perspectives. And, I've argued with Big Ten fans and Pac-12 fans about this all season, where I've thought Georgia was, the best team in America basically in week number 1. And everyone told me I was crazy, discounting TCU, which I was wrong about. I was wrong about TCU. But guess what? Everyone else was wrong about Georgia. And so I think we just have to appreciate what we saw last night for what it is, and that is a coronation of Stetson Bennett, which is an extraordinary story in and of itself, and a 47-year-old head football coach with 2 rings at his alma mater, and that and just understanding that that's 24 more years until he gets to Nick Saban's age. Just so everybody knows.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what he's doing right now, and I do want to talk about that and Kirby Smart and Georgia in the future. But as it relates to specifically TCU in last night's game, it's always fascinating the last game and how that can shape the offseason or your feeling of the entire season overall. Because TCU making the college football playoff and talking to a TCU alum heading into the Michigan game, it was just want it to be competitive. Just be competitive, be there, chance to win, and you know what? I'll take it, and it's been a phenomenal season. And they win that game, and then again, it's, you know what? Do they have a chance to win? I don't know. I mean, we've found ways to win all these times, and just, I want it to be a closer game and be fun. And instead, it was embarrassing, and it's unfortunate for TCU because Georgia's really freaking good, and you can't play a game in which you're turning the ball over like that against Georgia and expect to come close to winning. It's interesting, a last game of the season, how it can sort of shape that. I wonder if there's almost more positive feelings of TCU if they just barely lost to Michigan in the college football playoff instead of getting blown out by Georgia in the national championship game.
I see. I don't know. Like, I think the win over Michigan, and again, last week we talked about this. I don't like using the word fluky because that feels disrespectful, but it was unusual. They needed some unusual things to happen to win the game, and that involved Michigan maybe overthinking it and making some questionable calls. That involved TCU making huge plays that don't normally happen for either team, frankly. I just think. I actually think the win over Michigan is what validates the perspective, honestly. I totally understand TCU fans may be saying, you know what, the morning after with the hangover and the bludgeoning, maybe you think differently. But part of my job is I'm not a fan of either team, and I don't care, and I just try to look at it through the historical lens. And I think Stetson Bennett's historical lens is going to get more appreciated as time goes on. I think we're kind of tired of the story. I think fans are kind of tired of the walk-on thing and the JUCO. But, his story is unprecedented. And so I think as we go along, if Rudy is a movie, which I think is a documentary, by the way, if Rudy is a movie, then Stetson Bennett makes Rudy look like a daytime soap opera. It's nothing. The Rudy story is nothing compared to what Stetson Bennett has accomplished. And so that story I think we're going to appreciate as time goes along and the Disney movie gets made, and we're all going to, I think, appreciate that a lot more because his own fan base didn't want him to play in the playoff last year, some of them. So back to TCU, I think as time goes by, the fact that TCU beat Michigan, the only other undefeated conference champion, in a playoff game as an underdog to get to the national championship game in sort of an unprecedented way, to me, that's what validates all the comebacks in the regular season. It validates, all right, just because you lost to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game doesn't mean you weren't deserving. To me, it validates everything that TCU fans or proponents or believers were sort of selling all season, even though I think there's no way you could have sold this until you got to, maybe the Texas game. But I think, to me, that's what validates it all. And so, the fact that they got there was kind of good enough for me as an objective observer, because I kind of felt like, this is not going to be pretty when we get to Monday night. And while I was rooting for TCU to win, I think we all kind of knew it was going to happen, and nobody thought it was going to be that bad. 1 point per play at one point, I think, 45 points in 45 plays. They're picking up a first down on every snap. These are two teams in two different stratospheres, and I think the big takeaway should not be anti-TCU.
Yeah.
It should be pro-Georgia, and I think that's a very different approach because I think most fans outside of the SEC wanted to believe that Georgia was somehow the same as Michigan and all these other teams, TCU. We were disrespecting – the pollsters were disrespecting TCU and Michigan and Ohio State, and I just – it's pretty clear that Georgia's the head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, and I would say that, I give me the win over Michigan and the blowout loss in the championship game because I still made it to the national championship game. I still won a playoff game in a season where I was picked 7th in the Big 12. So obviously,
anyone else from that conference? Anyone else in the conference claim that right now?
Anybody in the conference ever claim a college football playoff win?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anybody else in the entire conference, can they claim a victory like TCU can claim? No, they can't. So to me, that's the validation.
Absolutely. Even with the 50-point loss in that game. And I'm with you that, to me, the takeaway was how dominant Georgia is and being the class of college football now moving forward. And you're right. The Stetson Bennett story is just phenomenal because we've seen the quarterbacks start to take over even in college football and winning national championships with some high-level quarterback play and Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence and, Joe Burrow and things like that. And then it's, Stetson Bennett the last couple of years. And his story, it could be Rudy. I mean, because you take some lines from that, he's so little. He's little. When you got Rock talking to him, you're 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing. And you're playing with some of the best football players in the world. Like, oh yeah, that's Stetson Bennett as well.
And your coach literally never offered you a scholarship and doesn't really want you on the team and didn't really think you could start for the team. And again, JT Daniels. Now some of this is not true because the coaching staff didn't explain this. But if you go back and if you read headlines about Georgia fans and Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels after the loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game, there was a big chunk of the fan base that was questioning whether or not Stetson Bennett should start in the playoff. Since that moment, Stetson Bennett has 2 rings, and JT Daniels, 5-star number 2 quarterback in the nation, has transferred twice. So I think that's just another, and it's not even a knock on JT Daniels. It's just sort of a bullet point part of the story. Now, to be fair, the reality of the situation was that Kirby Smart and Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, could have quieted all of that down a lot sooner had they just said out loud, like they did in the playoff game against Michigan, we're playing Stetson Bennett because he gives us the best chance to win. We've done that all season long. If they had just said all along that Stetson Bennett is clearly the better player, I think they would have shut a lot of people up and fans wouldn't have had all this drama. And Stetson, frankly, would not have dealt with some of the things that he dealt with. Now, what's fascinating, and maybe this is part of the Disney story, in the locker, in those scenes with Rudy that you're talking about, what's fascinating is how much Kirby kind of gives it to Stetson to use it as motivation for Stetson. And Stetson, every chance he gets, publicly acknowledges that, how hard it is for Kirby Smart to, be nice. He's always Kirby Smart calls timeout to get you to come off the field, and he's like, oh yeah, that's especially hard for him. That's Stetson's response to that. And so I'm fascinated by the dynamic of that relationship and the push and pull, and was constantly having the JT Daniels news in the story out there, which he could have ended at any point last season. If he was just the best quarterback on the practice field every single day, and that's why he was starting every single game, he could have just said that and shut everybody up. But again, that's part of the story is this relationship with the head coach, the relationship with all the 5-stars, because it literally is walk-on junior college transfer beats out 5-star after 5-star after 5-star to win the job and goes on to win 2 rings. That's not Tommy Frazier. That's not Matt Leinart. That's not A.J. McCarron was a 4-star top 100 recruit. These guys, I'm not suggesting they don't all play with great players around them. They do, but none of those 3, Frazier, Leinart, or McCarron, is even close to the same type of player that Stetson Bennett is from a touted standpoint coming out of high school.
I do wonder how much coaches sort of get in their own, mind of picturing a prototype of what a guy's supposed to look like, what the stars are, especially in the college ranks. Of, okay, well, JT Daniels, he can do this for us, or this player can do this for us. Yes, Stetson Bennett, we know what we have with him, but if we can improve that spot too, how much better can we be? And so always trying a good quarterback, but trying to find the replacement instead of maybe, even acknowledging in your own mind that this guy is pretty damn good. I mean, pretty darn good for a college quarterback, but pretty damn good in general. He was phenomenal last night. He was brilliant last night.
Well, and that's the part of the story that I think will be interesting because I think it was pretty clear. So if you go back to the Arkansas game at the beginning of last season when Daniels gets hurt, they go to the backup, who's the 4-star athlete freshman, not named Stetson Bennett, he doesn't work either. They pull him out of the second half, and Stetson goes in and wins the game against Arkansas, and basically like his first ever action. And we're all like, who the heck is this guy? And he wins the game for him, and then comes back and is not the starter like the next week. Like he has to win. Like he's Carson. He has to battle Carson Beck to win the starting job. And basically, what the coaching staff has now admitted 2 years later is that basically from that first practice, Stetson Bennett has been the best quarterback on the roster. And they just never really publicly came out and just said, no, he's our starting quarterback. He's the best player in practice. He gives us the best chance to win. They just never came out and said that until, like, the Michigan game last year going into the playoff. And obviously after that, the rest is history.
Yeah.
But if you look how he plays in the championship games, I mean, his numbers in the 4 playoff games are insane. Over 10 yards per attempt, over 300 yards passing, almost 70% completion percentage, 15 total touchdowns, 1 interception in 4 playoff wins. That is Vince Young stuff. Like, and it's off the charts for a guy who was again told no by his own team, coaching staff, and fan base for the better part of 3 years.
Yeah, and them saying he's the best quarterback in practice, yet other guys are getting opportunities. I always go back to something that happened locally that Larry Johnson was the running back. Jamal Charles would come in and get carries, and it'd be like, oh, he gained 8 yards. Oh, hey, look, Jamal Charles again, 8 yards. But Larry Johnson is the guy and his 3.5 yards per carry. Larry Johnson eventually kicked off the team out of Kansas City, and Todd Haley then goes, you know what? Let me go to that backup guy, Colby Smith, and have him start at running back, and Jamal Charles still be the backup. Colby Smith got injured. He had to play Jamal Charles, and the rest is history. He was Jamal Charles. Like, even the coaches were like, yeah, we don't want to we want to use him as a specific thing. We've got an idea for what type of running back he is. He's not an every down back. Turns out he was the best back in Chiefs history, and he couldn't get on the field because of Colby Smith and Larry Johnson 3 yards per carry. I always go back to that sometimes coaches have in their own mind pigeonhole a player, and it's tough for that player to sort of break out of that box and show like, no, I'm actually better than that.
Yeah.
So
no, and again, I think you're right. There is something to how, again, I think this is a big part of the story. Like, the last part of the story that is going to be untold is sort of the unpacking of the Kirby Smart Stetson Bennett relationship. Like, that's the last piece of it, and you probably need a couple more years before either one of them sits down and kind of tells all the stories and really is allowed, like, before each of, I mean, again, it's all so super fresh, but like, that is the dynamic because they have such an interesting relationship. Like, Kirby has no problem undressing him at halftime. That there's no problem with criticizing him. I mean, again, he comes in and wins that Arkansas game. I think it was 2 years ago, actually, and like, just never gets a chance after that. Really, JT Daniels starts at the end of the season after he gets hurt. Like, he's in it. Like, we've kind of gone over this, but that's the part of it that's the last sort of chapter, or maybe it's a middle chapter, but it's the last part we don't really know. Now, what he said in the post game was that Kirby came over to him, hugged him, and said, "I love you, man," and he'll never know what we mean to each other. Well, let's unpack that a little bit more because it probably was pretty rocky getting to that point, and or at least interesting. It may not be rocky; it may just be interesting, and because otherwise, the story on the field is told. Like, it is the Disney movie, and it's already written for you. I just think exploring the two characters' psychology is sort of the last piece of it, and otherwise, like, I mean, like, what else can we say about Georgia's last 2 seasons? Like, it does, like.
Yeah,
29-1, man. No one's ever done it. That's it. Like, full stop.
And you know what? Maybe we find out that Kirby's smart and is looking at it and saying, "Well, I did all this on purpose because what made Stetson Bennett great was him thinking that people didn't believe in him and always having to swim uphill and fight and fight and fight." If I started treating him like he was accepted, like he was one of the guy, does he still have that edge? I don't know.
Well, and Kirby. And if you watch the pregame where he says, we're going hunting tonight, and I was like, oh God, this is going to be bad for TCU. Like, he used that phrase literally. I was in Atlanta at SEC Media Days, and he stepped to the podium, and his first message, his first statement was about how this is a different team that hasn't accomplished anything, and the minute we think we're being hunted, we've lost. So we're going hunting this year. And it seems cliche. It kind of seems silly. It sounds like a coach doing his spiel up there, which he was. And we kind of all look at each other and then roll our eyes in the media room. But, like, that was the message. That was the thing all along for him was We are going to be aggressive. We are going to go after people. I think they got a little bored at times, probably Kentucky, Missouri, a few other teams. Frankly, those two teams actually had pretty decent defenses this year. But I think people look at Georgia and they go, oh, this team's not even close to as good as they were last year. And while that's probably true, they beat 7 ranked opponents by an average score this year of 47-17. They beat 7 ranked teams by an average of 30 points. Like, you're telling me that's not a dominant team? So I do think there is a misconception about this Georgia team that I feel like they sort of corrected last night to some degree.
Braden Gall is our guest, college football insider, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports. Kirby Smart's 5 years away from being the age of Nick Saban when Saban won his first national championship, and Kirby Smart already has 2. What would you, if you're in Vegas, what would you set the over-under on for national championships for Kirby Smart in his career as a 47-year-old, 2-time national championship winning coach? He's 5 years older than me. What the hell am I doing with my life?
Yeah. What's wrong with us? Nick Saban won his second championship at 57.
Oh wow!
So that's 10 years younger to win his second title. And again, Kirby probably could have 3 right now if it wasn't for one crazy throw by Tua and one crazy decision, frankly, by Nick at halftime. I do think so. Again, 47 years old. Nick Saban's 71. You're looking at You're talking about 24 more years of Kirby Smart at Georgia to get to where Nick Saban is today. Like that is extraordinary to think about. Who knows, 5, 6. I think chasing down his old boss is very well within reach. Georgia has the most. That state has turned into a better state for talent than even California. So they're in prime recruiting territory. There's nothing wrong with facilities or money. There's nothing. I mean, they're going to have to deal with the same problems as any dynasty, which is complacency, losing coaches, transfer portal, NIL, better competition around them in the SEC. If Tennessee, LSU, and Florida are all better, I think that's, Auburn's on the schedule every year if they're better under Hugh Freeze. So, there could be some things that clearly trip them up. And even Bama and Clemson and Ohio State don't win every championship. So there's enough to go around for, Kirby to grab a couple more for sure. And I think pushing for that 4, 5, 6 number to try to catch Saban is probably the goal. The problem is I don't know if you watched the halftime segment where David Pollack is sitting 3 feet from Nick Saban and says, Georgia is now the kings of college football, basically. And you can see, Nick Saban has, a twitch. He played it off pretty smooth. He played it off pretty smoothly, but you could see, he does this, looks down and, you could tell he's getting angry, but then he knows he's on screen, so he's got to play it cool. But you could tell it was a nervous tick. He's like, "What am I doing on this set? I need to be back with my team, making sure we're better next year." And I wouldn't put past Alabama to knock off a few more rings as well over the next few seasons.
Is there a coach/program combination that if you put them together could be the next Kirby Smart? Kirby goes to Georgia, his alma mater, the recruiting ground, how good he is, the tutelage under Nick Saban, that we see this was just the perfect match, the perfect marriage, and now it's a powerhouse. It doesn't have to be a coach at a program now, but is there a coach/program that if they got together, that thing could be a Kirby Smart-esque thing?
USC number 1. I mean, that's the easy answer with Lincoln Riley. And number 2 might be Steve Sarkisian in Texas, but Texas sort of has a way of getting in its own way. And frankly, both of those teams are going to enter conferences that are going to be significantly more difficult. Yeah. So Ohio State and Ryan Day, I don't know. I think, every coach at Ohio State's basically won a national championship, so Ryan Day's got to be in this mix. I don't think Mike Norvell and Florida State are there yet. Cristobal in Miami, but it is basically the same list of schools that has won basically every national championship other than Georgia Tech, Colorado in 90, and BYU in 84, going back to Pittsburgh in 76. We're talking, 50 plus years. That every single national championship has basically been won by the same 15 to 18 schools. And so you have to look at those schools and say which school's in a position to win at the highest level. And to me, USC is the easiest answer with Lincoln Riley because that offense ain't going anywhere. They're going to be able to power the football. They're going to be able to run. They're going to be able to recruit quarterbacks. They're in a great recruiting territory. They've got all the support they need, and now they're going to get a bunch of financial resources from the Big Ten. And, with the expanded playoff, I think the reason the Big Ten is totally fine with expansion of the playoff and expanding to the West Coast is that they know they can get 3 or 4 teams in on a given year. And if that means Ohio State, Michigan, and USC get in, that's pretty likely. If it's Penn State and Michigan and USC, sure. If it's USC, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, sure. Like, they can still get 2 or 3 teams in every single year into the 12-team playoff. And if USC's got Lincoln Riley running the ship, then I think they're clearly the next one on the list. Dabo, we'll see about rebuilding and what that looks like. That run from 15 to 2019 was truly extraordinary. And it's only been 2 years sort of out of or 3 years sort of out of that realm. But, like, they've got all the main building blocks are gone from that thing. And so he's going to have to kind of show us that he can do it again, which is really, the only time Nick Saban or future Kirby Smart, when you lose 7 assistants in 1 year, that's the kind of thing that can slow your program down. But I trust Saban and Smart to handle that. Lincoln Riley and USC is the easy one. I do think Sark has a chance at Texas more than I've felt about somebody else at Texas, but I'll believe that one when I see it, because there's always too many people getting involved to try to steer the program the way they think that it should go, and too much noise around that program. It's got a lot of Auburn vibes, heavy Auburn vibes, and Florida State's got some of that too. A&M's got some of that too, where it's just how aligned can you be? And that's what truly makes Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State special, is that they are all extraordinarily aligned in their vision for how to find success. And there's a reason those 3 are probably the best 3 programs right now in college football.
2 quick ones. Is Jim Harbaugh at Michigan next year coaching?
I don't know, man. I thought so before the TCU game. I thought for sure. He'd never been more adamant about it, but there's a lot of noise right now behind the scenes, on Twitter, in front of the scenes, on the cameras that he's interviewing, I guess, with Denver. There's a lot of people that think he would just take the Denver job automatically. I think Carolina. There's some decent and interesting jobs available in the NFL. So it would be. Does Jim Harbaugh lie awake at night and dream about Michigan winning a national championship or the Lombardi Trophy? And I'm pretty sure that the Lombardi Trophy is the thing that dances in his dreams at night. And so unfortunately for Michigan, he's broken through twice now and just not good enough. And I think that might be enough to push him to the NFL, a place where I think he wants to be anyway. So,
who wins the national championship next year?
Oh God. I mean, Georgia's schedule they're going to be back. The questions about Ohio State and Alabama replacing quarterbacks is going to be interesting, but they're both loaded. Lots of really young, talented options. There's always teams that develop quickly. So programs like Oklahoma, a team that is routinely available in the top 5 and the top 10 that knows that it's always there. Again, this is sort of like the Clemson argument as well. I think Florida State's going to be really salty. I think LSU could be very dangerous with Jane Daniels coming back and Brian Kelly with another full year to develop and build that team. I don't know what to expect from the other schools like Penn State and Michigan. I don't really know how good Penn State was this year. They were pretty darn good, but they're losing some pieces. Quarterbacks needs to change as well. With Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley out there, it feels like USC and Georgia are probably 2 that you feel pretty good about. I might go Alabama and then wild card, other wild card team, which LSU, Florida State. I think Notre Dame's going to be really good. Getting Sam Hartman is a big pickup. So I think check out our Top 25 podcast. We're going to be doing one of those coming up here in a couple days.
Awesome.
We'll already have preseason Athlon Sports. Never too early preseason Top 25 stuff.
I agree with that because oddly enough, you look at the previous years, too early or never too early Top 25s. Then you look at the next year, you're like, oh, kind of the same. Actually, pretty smart.
Well, and that's
actually close.
It's funny you mention that because we try to and not to go like full Steve Jobs, we try to think differently about our rankings every single year because a lot of times we know we're going to miss on TCU. Mm-hmm. Like we know we're going to miss on that team every now and then. And so we really try hard to all right, where where could we miss? Where did we miss? And, like Cincinnati was actually fairly predictable. Like, I was not a team that was, I think they were like preseason, like number 6 or 7 in the magazine. So I think there is some, like, I think Tennessee's going to take a step back. I think Oregon could be pretty salty with Bo Nix coming back. There's a lot of really interesting football teams that are outside of Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, whatever. And, Kansas State's an interesting team. So we'll see what they look like next year.
Braden Gall, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports, 440 Podcast Network, our college football insider. Braden, I had a blast this college football season. Thank you so much for the time each and every week and breaking things down as only you can. Thank you for the time, man. I appreciate it as always, brother.
Yeah, always a pleasure, guys.
All right, there's Braden Gall, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports, the 440 Podcast Network, Fringe Element Football Show, and getting ready to record the Athlon Sports Never Way Too Early Top 25 for next year. And also a man who gave us the Nobody Cares line. So, we will always have that. Always have. Nobody cares. 913-912-4810. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. We talked with Adam Teicher in the 11 o'clock hour, some things that are some takeaways from that conversation, some college football talk we can get into as well. And then an hour from now, we will talk with the 18th manager of the Kansas City Royals, Matt Quatraro, will be hanging out with us here in studio. We'll take a timeout. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Hardman, or as Booger would say, Hardiman, or because I like getting names pronounced correctly, by the way, so anybody that doesn't pronounce it correctly on my bleep list.
A few moments later.
Derek Robinson, things like that.
Who's Derek Robinson?
Is he
DeMarcus Robinson's brother?
Yeah, the Royals player, Derek Robinson, the old Royals player, Derek Robinson. Big fan of his.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, thank you to Braden Gall, College Football Insider. We will start our conversations in college basketball. It's been so crazy with the Chiefs and press conferences and our Chiefs and NFL guests and Braden Gall and college football going on. We'll start tomorrow with Myron Metcalf, and then we will have him on Tuesdays throughout the college basketball season until, April, whatever the Tuesday is after the national championship game. So we'll talk with Myron Metcalf tomorrow, start our college basketball conversations with our college basketball insider, Myron Metcalf. So thank you to Braden Gall all year long, talking some college football with us. And Georgia, back-to-back national champions, 29-1 in a 2-year run, and then they won 4 games at the end of the year in 2020, so 33-1 in their last 34 games. And he's right. Kirby Smart could have 3 national championships if it wasn't for Second and Tua. I mean, that play, it's amazing looking back surrounding that game that Nick Saban at halftime said, I need to pull my starting quarterback for this freshman. I need to take Jalen Hurts out of the game to put in Tua Tagovailoa.
Which has only gotten even funnier through their NFL careers, which is never how it works.
Right.
It's always
amazing.
John David Booty and I'm trying to remember who the quintessential Bama with bangs guy I'm thinking of. It doesn't matter. It's never this.
Greg
though.
McElroy.
That might be
AJ McCarron.
AJ McCarron's also great.
Yeah, those guys, the quintessential Alabama. Brody Croyle, only not winning.
Don't tweet me about John David Booty not playing at Bama. I'm trying to think of funny names. USC.
Wasn't John David Booty, was he at A&M or USC?
He was drafted out of USC.
God, I think John David Booty, A&M.
There's a specific, I think it's a 3-named quarterback from Alabama. I'll look into it.
Okay.
I'm on it.
Thank you for getting to the
You're
bottom
welcome.
of that. Yes, it is usually those are usually the things we hear about, is that the lesser than quarterback is benched for the better than quarterback, and then that guy goes on to being a stud.
I'd like to apologize to the friends and family of John Parker Wilson, who was actually the name living in my mind.
You knew it started with a John, though.
I knew it was a John with 3 names. I knew he directly succeeded Brody Croyle.
And then it was John Parker Wilson is not John David Booty.
We'll never make that mistake again.
Thank you to Braden Gall. He said, 4, 5, 6 for Kirby Smart. That would put the over-under at 5, but that's, too much of a round number. So I put it at 5.5, I think. If I put it at 4.5, I would take the over. So I feel like it'd be too easy for me to say, I'm going to put it at 4.5 so I can take the over because I think he's going to get to 5. Okay. So if you think he's going to get to 5, is he going to get to 6? Because he's 10 years younger.
It's crazy.
Than Nick Saban when he won his 2nd national title. And again, he could have 3. He doesn't. But that's what's tough about it, is that he could have 3. But you know what? Nick Saban hasn't won every single year.
Right.
There are years when Nick Saban has lost in the championship and didn't win one. And the last 2 years, not winning one and having to sit next to David Pollock. When David Pollock says that Georgia's now the face of college football, they've taken over college football. He is right, though, Braden, is when, the view of Nick Saban, they're like, hey, look at Nick Saban's face. And I was watching him I don't really see much of a reaction. But Braden's right. It was more like a tick, more like a nervous sort of twitch when he heard that. And Braden saying that nervous twitch was, why am I on this set and not trying to get my team better right now? Well, you're recruiting. That's what you're doing. You're up there on the set because you're Nick Saban in Alabama, so you're recruiting. People are paying attention to Georgia, but they're also seeing Alabama and Nick Saban at the same time. So Georgia's dominating. Hey, look, there's Nick Saban in Alabama. He's recruiting me too. He's up there on stage. So that, is part of it. But yeah, I bet there's a lot of that in Nick Saban, where anything he's doing, he's probably thinking, should I be doing this or should I be making my program better? It's that Pete Maravich line that Pete Maravich always said, every second I'm not practicing, somebody out there is, and when I meet him, he'll win. Like, that's Nick Saban. I'm on this set right now, and I'm not making my team better. We are falling behind right now. Is Brian Kelly, what's Brian Kelly and LSU doing right now?
Brian Kelly's at home spending time with his family.
I mean, gosh, is Brian Kelly with his family right now, or is he out there with his football family and trying to, win a game? I don't need to be here on set. This guy next to me is, talking about how the program's no longer the face of college football. And we thought Clemson was going to be the one to overtake Alabama. And so while Clemson's doing their whole thing of, having their run from 15 to 19, Georgia's sitting there like, okay, well, that's fine. We're here and we're collecting. We're collecting everything. We're collecting the ammunition to go and eventually take over. And we're collecting it by averaging the number 2 recruiting class from 2017 to 2022. And we'll just sit here and we'll have 15 players get drafted on a championship team, and we'll return and we'll play a team in the championship that we have 50 more players on our roster that are 4 and 5 stars than the other team. 50 more 4 and 5 stars on Georgia than TCU. The year after they had 15 players drafted. That's how you win, is because you stack on stack on stack on stack on stack the recruiting classes. And why I always laugh at the people that say, recruiting classes, those recruiting numbers, they don't matter. They're always wrong. Those recruiting classes are ranking this and stars this and stars that. Well, I'm pretty sure we were joking about, wow, the number 2, the backups for Georgia are doing this to TCU. Yeah, because their backups are 4 and 5 stars. Turns out it matters. You pulled up really good players, you can have a really good team.
I pulled up the Tua Hurts game, and just to kind of underline that point, sometimes you got to go back in time to really appreciate the depth of talent. So in this game, Alabama had carries recorded by Najee Harris, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, and Bo Scarborough.
I remember the winning touchdown. I know who that was too.
On the Georgia side, just purely carries here, we have Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, and McCole Hardman, who had a rushing touchdown in that game.
Wow.
Receiving for Bama, that includes Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Damian Harris, a few others that didn't make as big of a splash at the NFL level, but that's just the NFL depth chart I just gave you. And then for Georgia, McCole Hardman, DeAndre Swift, Nick Chubb, the names that you would remember. That's not even going to the defensive side, which I'm just scanning. Yeah, these are all NFL players.
Yeah.
Not literally, but like
the talent on that field.
The pass catchers are, I wonder if that will be, we've had this conversation about how good pass catchers in college have gotten, but I wonder if we're going to be able to do just like skill position on offense, go back and look as a barometer just for the type of talent that gets recruited, because the talent should be there in the pre-draft process also. So that's how you end up with one game, including Najee Harris, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, McCole Hardman, Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. There is so much like top-of-the-line NFL talent crunched into one title game. This is just the one that we could first look back at with something to take away, which is like, oh yeah, more than half of these dudes are pros, and good pros.
There's so much talent out there, and a lot of those guys were 4 and 5 star recruits, almost like the stars were somewhat correct.
That can't be.
Maybe.
That can't be yet.
Probably not. They're probably just guessing as to why these teams that are up there near the top are. And then it's like, well, look at TCU. Yes, there are always exceptions to the rule, but you can have your choice. I'll give you 15 players that are 5 stars, and I'll give you 15 players that are 3 stars. Which one you choosing? You choosing the 5 stars? So therefore, without even seeing them, without even knowing the position, you choose the 5 stars because you do think they matter.
Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley, and Jerry Jeudy would be the best receiving core in the NFL right now.
Dude, you're not wrong.
I'm not even exaggerating, and I'm not including Henry Ruggs, who again was playing in that game at the time.
Dude, you're not wrong. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly. and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Why are you getting things wrong, Jason?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Can we play Quinn Miners? No, I mean, actually, I want to see the Chiefs play a game with Quinn Miners on the field because they're 4-0 when that's happened. So I'd like to see them continuing to play games with Quinn Miners You know what? Here's the thing, buddy. Step aside. We want adults here, not minors. 4-0 against that guy. God, he's got to be salty, right? But he's excited about the Broncos beating the Chiefs. Oh, wait, did they play the Chiefs this weekend?
No, they played twice a little earlier in the year, and the Chiefs did win both of those.
Oh, interesting. They didn't play the Chiefs this weekend.
No.
But
it'd be weird for him to be talking about the Chiefs this week.
It would be. Luckily, he doesn't.
There's no way that...
This was just a pretty benign, generic answer that I don't know why people are playing this, but we'll play it too. It was in the system. Quinn Miners is talking about his off-season plans.
My initial thoughts are it is kind of early. I'm still enjoying the high and the rush of yesterday's win, to be honest. I genuinely feel like really happy and satisfied after a win like that. There definitely will be time to sit and reflect on what happened this year. Initial thoughts are we understand that's unacceptable, and it's time for Broncos country to be on the winning side and being in the playoffs and dominating our opponents in this division. I said it before, I'm sick of losing to the Chiefs. That is like my number one goal that I'm looking at every day is I really want to beat them. I'm gonna say it because it's one on my chest. The fact that they did that little ring around a rosy play against the Raiders genuinely pissed me off, and I'm just excited for that day and for that moment, and that's one of the things that I'm preparing for going into next year is to be ready to beat them, because we've played them very close, at least for the last 2 years that I've been here, and I'm excited to eventually be on the other side of that because I'm sick of it just like everyone else is.
What are your off-season plans? You know what? That disrespectful ring around the rosy play by the Chiefs yesterday, I'm pretty tired of that bleep, okay? It's time for us to beat this team because 15 in a row is an embarrassment. You know what's disrespectful? Beating a team 15 straight times. That's pretty disrespectful. I mean, that's just punking them and treating them like they are your children. You are their daddies. Pedro Martinez, let's just call the Yankees our daddies. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs own the Denver Broncos, and they also own a pretty decent amount of space in a lot of people's minds. Rent-free. And Quinn Miners was so upset about that ring around the rosy. It was so disrespectful. They took knees, though. They didn't score there at the end. Was that disrespectful? I don't know.
I'm going to play a little devil's advocate before I come back to the fun side again. Okay. Because the fun side's still more fun.
Fun side is way more fun than real stuff.
If you're a member of the Denver Broncos and and someone's asking you what you're going to use to motivate yourself for the offseason, and what you say is, I'm really tired of beating the Chiefs, hey, man, I believe you. I get it.
Getting beat by the Chiefs?
Yeah, what did I say?
You said beating the Chiefs.
Sorry, it would be maybe he's going through the mental reps. That could be exhausting, I suppose.
Yeah.
But no, whenever you've had your entire pro career, there is a team that has clearly owned you in the division. Like, that's the thing. You know, Chris Jones was honing in on the Bengals over the offseason, right?
Yeah,
that can be a rah-rah thing.
Absolutely.
I have no real beef with Quinn Miners. He warms up with his belly out. I'm a fan of that. However, to say this thing they did against a divisional rival over there, I found disrespectful, sounds very silly. I like it when players are honest.
Yeah.
But sometimes honesty makes you sound kind of silly, and Quinn Miners sounds very silly there.
I just want to know, what's the line of disrespectful versus fun? Because one of the Patriots blog tools that was very up in arms about the Chiefs doing this against maybe his second favorite team, the Raiders, was talking about how disrespectful it was and poor sportsmanship, but then was also tweeting about how fun the Jalen Waddle defensive lineman dance was when they sacked the Miami quarterback making fun of Jalen Waddle. It was just fun.
Hypocrisy on Twitter?
No.
This SportsCenter is brought to you by the University of St. Mary. Looking for a flexible MBA? Join the University of St. Mary for a virtual info session at 6 p.m. on January 19th. Register at stmary.edu/RSVP. It was over almost as soon as it began last night in the College Football Playoff National Championship game, with Georgia dominating TCU to the tune of a 65-7 victory, with 4 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns from Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett, who didn't even throw a pass in the fourth quarter. That's back-to-back titles for Georgia, with last night's win bringing the largest margin of victory in bowl history. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes has joined the ownership group of the Kansas City Current, giving him ownership stakes in the Current, Royals, and Sporting Kansas City. No jokes needed about the rest of the AFC West. Speaking of baseball, new Royals manager Matt Quatraro joins the Zone at 1:30. Until then, more Zone on the other side of the break. I'm Joshua Brisco. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
You were just so easy to hate, and you're right here, and you seem like a really nice guy, but man, you were easy to hate.
Well, thank you.
On Sports Radio 810.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beers. We will talk with Matt Quatraro coming up later on this hour. Manager of the Kansas City Royals, spring training. Coming up later on. Year number 1 for J.J. Piccolo's Royals and Matt Quatraro as the manager, with new staff, focus on the pitching side, the balance of the coaching staff that was more even hitting and pitching side that is now weighted on and leaning pitching over hitting with the assistant coaches that they have brought in, along with the development and, you know, the R&D part of it and the analytics, communication, pitch shaping, that there are more coaches with specific roles and teachings and implementing, as opposed to coaches that were just more, hey, I'm a coach. This is my general view on these different things that go on in baseball, as opposed to, hey, I'm a pitch shape coach. When we're talking pitch shape, I'm the guy you come and talk to. Hey, I'm the specific to nutrition for a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher or a closer or a second baseman. Hey, I'm the guy that's there that's going to be the fitness and what it's going to take for your arm and control and things like that, as opposed to, hey, I'm your guy that here's what you probably should eat. Pitch shape, let's work on that. We can do some of those things. I have a pretty good idea about that. Pitch shape, first pitch strike, we care about that. We got to have that first pitch strike. I don't really know how to do that, but I can try to help you along the way.
I love the idea of there just being like a different meal plan for the bullpen as opposed to the starters.
Just totally made that up. I don't
know. No, is there an apple in there? No, that's for the pen. No.
You don't eat an apple if you're the third starter.
Brady Singer gave up 19 runs in 2 1/3 today. After the game, he said he had an apple.
Fire them all. Fire them all. You know that your first 3 starters in your rotation cannot have an apple.
Second baseman gets 45 grams of carbs. The shortstop gets 50. Why is it so hard to follow?
I mean, they do it in the NFL, in football. Why can't they do it in baseball?
I mean, here's the thing.
Here's the thing. A second baseman and a catcher probably shouldn't have the same amount of calories.
Probably not.
That's what I'm saying.
That's probably true. And if Scott Barlow eats a grape, his season falls apart. That's my concern.
It's done. You know, what do you eat that makes your arm stronger versus what do you eat that can make your body stronger? Obviously, spinach for the pitchers.
Yes.
Everybody else, I'm not sure.
As long as you're right-handed. If you're a left-handed pitcher, don't eat spinach.
No,
do not eat the spinach if you're a lefty.
It's going to be really weird to see you out there on the mound with one arm looking like Captain America and the other arm looking like Kevin Durant.
That would be a problem if you're pitching with the Durant arm, I think. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Randy Johnson might have had a Durant arm because, you know, Durant's 7 foot.
That's right. That's a good point.
You know what I've always imagined when it comes to the World Baseball Classic? What if you took all the best athletes in these other sports and put them on the baseball team? Like, you take what would LeBron be as a first baseman? Aaron Judge,
I'm so glad that we're having this conversation.
Like
finally.
Kevin Durant as a pitcher.
Yeah.
You know, He's practically touching the catcher when he releases the ball. I can't imagine anybody that's ever looked like
we
that.
We basically had this with Chris Young.
Chris Young was how tall was
he? Was
6'7"?
6'9".
Yeah, he was pretty tall. He's a pretty tall guy. And as you could tell,
and hard to hit.
And as you could tell, his fastball, what was it, 105, 106 with his fastball?
Yeah, gas. I think he hit 110 at a time. 6'10". Unbelievable.
How about that, huh? Wow, almost 7 feet.
Along with former pitchers,
doesn't
Eric Tillman, Randy
doesn't
Johnson.
Durant always fight people that, not literally, but doesn't he always complain?
I think he's technically listed without shoes at like 6'10".
Right, but he always fights people when they say he's 7 foot. He doesn't want to be 7 foot.
He doesn't want that.
Yes,
it's odd that he's like, no, he wants to, because people are like, oh, you're 7 foot, so he's been
per the best website on earth, Basketball Reference, he is listed at 6'10".
Imagine just a baseball in Giannis's hand. That might be the thing that gets in the way. Are his fingers like touching his own palm?
What about Wemby? What about Wemby?
I haven't researched the hand size on Wemby.
Are the Pirates going to take him?
They should. Might as well try.
What about Shaq? Like Shaq as a pitcher? Or
we're going to do this for 30 minutes with Matt Quatraro, right? Be like, okay, Matt, let me give you a different player from a different sport, and you tell me what you think of Russell Westbrook.
Where would Westbrook play on your squad? Shaq as a catcher. I'm not running over the catcher.
No, God. No, I'll stay right here.
You don't have to implement the rule of players can't hit the catcher when they're not paying attention if Shaq is the catcher.
That rule takes care of itself. That rule is implied. That's an unwritten rule.
Also, it's kind of hard to enforce the rule of the catcher cannot block the plate when he blocks everything. That's there. Just his body is there. He blocks the sun half the time. He's a walking shadow. All right. He was in front of the plate. He's in front of the mound too. Just look at him. He's just sitting there. What do you want him to do? So yeah, there you go.
I was Googling Victor Wembanyama for this bit, and then I noticed that one of my recent Google searches, just from within the last few months, is Victor W. Height. And apparently Google figured that one out for me. Appreciate it, Google, not making me spell the name.
Is that the Google fill-in of
yeah.
It immediately probably is like height?
That one was specifically, it had the little icon that meant I have typed that before, and I apparently gave up spelling Wembanyama the first time.
I apparently have paid attention and searched for WAGs because almost every time I type in an athlete, the first thing that comes up is wife.
Oh,
is that with everybody?
No,
that's
because the internet's the worst.
Right, because
you search any famous athlete, it's going to be wife, mom, sister, because the internet does not know how to behave.
Well, because I was wherever I was at reading something about something, and it was there was a side thing that said Colin Morikawa is winless since he got engaged.
That's fine.
And that was it. So I'm like, oh, Colin Morikawa, fiance.
Sure, get the story.
But as I was typing that in, the first thing that pops up is wife.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, he's not married
yet. That's because the internet can't be trusted to be cool for like even a second.
Right. So I didn't know if it was maybe everybody, or if you do that once or twice, now all of a sudden you're getting targeted ads for.
Yeah. That will make you have what I think now are at a point culturally where we understand the power of the algorithm. Like you just like loiter on the wrong TikTok for too long, and now for the next month all you're getting is that one dance. Like, I didn't ask for this. I've finally gotten to where most of my algorithms are just giving me like cute animal videos and then occasionally something funny and weird.
Some Pokemon?
A couple of Pokemans here and there. Yeah, that's all I ask for.
We had a very uncomfortable about half hour, my wife and I, when she said, hey, I'm getting targeted ads with divorce lawyers on the Wi-Fi here. And I said...
I don't think that's how it works.
And I said... that's got to be from you.
Yeah.
Because she was like, well, I went to this website and this came up. And then went to that website. I'm like, okay, well then I went to the website and it was the same ad that popped up. And I'm like, maybe that's not a targeted ad. The same. Maybe that's just actually an ad that's there. I'm just saying.
It felt targeted at that point for you.
But also, Everett, what have you been looking up on Google? I know that you're a fan of Mike's Got This, but I don't think he's got that.
I don't think he wants this.
All right? My son loves Mike's Got This.
Sure, how could you not?
And he was very disappointed when at the end of the commercial, it was the entire group, and he said, we got this. And he goes, I thought Mike's got this. Why does he
Don't share the credit, Mike.
No, he was disappointed that he changed it to "we got this."
Right? Yeah.
Like,
this isn't about we gotten this. That doesn't even grammatically make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. Here's Dan Graziano. What he's hearing from Baltimore.
Hey, there's actually newsworthy information on this because the Ravens are having some money kind of get locked up right now. Because the Ravens have agreed. I said this off air, right? Did we say this on air?
No, you said it off air.
Okay.
It was off air.
Ian Rappaport tweeted out that the Ravens have agreed in principle with All-Pro linebacker Roquan Smith, now the highest paid at his position in NFL history, with a 5-year, $100 million deal, $45 million fully guaranteed, and $60 million in total guarantees. The first off-ball linebacker to get $20 million per year. Roquan represented himself. A little Ravens money news there before we.
Is there anybody else on the Ravens that represents themselves?
I can't think of anyone else
anybody other than a linebacker
Roquan
and a quarterback.
Smith. Oh, Lamar Jackson's doing that. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if that's relevant.
Also reps himself.
Yeah.
Here's Dan Graziano this morning on what he's hearing from Baltimore, what he's hearing from the coaches and people around the Ravens as it relates to Lamar Jackson and the status of him playing this weekend against the Bengals.
Hopefully he's progressed to the point where he can get out to practice. That's where the Ravens are with him. This guy has not practiced in more than 5 weeks. So the Ravens' hope is that he's able to get on the practice field this week in advance of the playoff game in Cincinnati. They won't know for sure until they get out there tomorrow and have their first practice of the week. But there is some optimism that they will have Lamar for this game. We have to remember that they've had optimism over the last couple of weeks, and it hasn't come to pass.
I've been wondering for 2 weeks if when they knew the playoffs were wrapped up, that they were going to be a playoff team, if January 14th and 15th was the goal for Lamar and Baltimore, that his health is more important than seeding or a home game, so we want him to be as close to healthy as possible. Here's Adam Schefter. He's weighing in also this morning on the status of Lamar Jackson.
He's still got swelling in that knee, and that swelling, I think, has helped prevent him from coming back. He's now missed 5 straight games, hasn't practiced once during the time that he sprained his PCL, so that knee is a factor. I mean, it's a real deal right now. Now, there are various people with different opinions. I had one person tell me last week there was a quote-unquote strong chance that Lamar would play this upcoming weekend in the wild card game on Sunday night against Cincinnati. Another person said, hold on, let's see how he fares at practice, if he practices this week. And yet another person thought that there was a decent chance that he would play. So I think there's a lot of different opinions and options on the table. And the facts are the facts here. They have to get him back to practice before he can play in the game. And if he's not back at practice on Wednesday, that'll be your first sign that it is not trending in a positive direction.
Tomorrow be a pretty decent idea of what Sunday night could look like tomorrow if Lamar Jackson is not at practice. Now, Ian Rappaport said yesterday that, I believe it was yesterday, that he had been told by people around Lamar Jackson that Lamar said he'll be back for the Bengals game in the playoffs. He'll be back for the wild card game in the playoffs. There are other people around the NFL that say, no, he's not playing, that he's not going to be playing this weekend. If you're the Bengals, obviously you're getting ready for Lamar Jackson because you've prepared for the other quarterbacks already. So you prepare for what life will be like on the field for Lamar Jackson. And guess what? You've got a history of it because you play in the division. You've played him twice a year, essentially, the last couple of years, except only playing him once this year.
Throwing him in cold turkey, though, has got to be rough.
I mean,
not ideal.
Yeah. I mean, if he still has swelling in that knee, the question would be, does Lamar Jackson risk it and say, I've got swelling in my knee still, I'm going to go out there in a playoff game and do all of this stuff to try to win a game, and I'm a free agent? Flip side of that is, if you're a member of the Ravens organization and you think the guy in a playoff game should be good enough to go in a playoff game and doesn't because he's worried about being a free agent, that's the last time that quarterback is on my team. I'm not paying that guy I'm not paying that guy millions and millions and millions of dollars to be a franchise quarterback when I'd have to be convinced of it. I'd have to believe in my heart that another quarterback goes out. And I know it's different with his knee, where you're talking about Lamar Jackson and not Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady's got some swelling in his knee. Cool. How's his arm? Right. Okay, it's fine. How's his brain?
How's his brain? Yep.
Exactly. You're fine. Lamar Jackson, a little different. If you've got some swelling in the knee and it limits you a little bit. Plus, he also knows that's, part of what makes him an incredibly valuable player is the legs. Strong arm, pretty good quarterback, incredibly dynamic playmaker. But if you think he's good enough to play, if you think it's one of those to where, we're holding him out of week 10, but if this was a playoff game, he'd be able to go. And if it is that playoff game and he can't go, and you think he probably could, one, why is he not playing? Two, is it because he's a free agent? And three, I'm finding a different quarterback at that time.
On the other side of it, if you're at Lamar Jackson's camp right now and you say, I think my knee's like 80% okay here, I could play through it, and I'm like a week away from starting the biggest payday of my life, not just to this point, but probably period. Is it worth joining back in on this team that I don't feel like is a Super Bowl contender, and I am not completely sure I know what's going on in my knee? Now, I'm assuming that there's a risk of re-injury, and it's not just a I don't want to be out there kind of thing, because at some point, you got to be out there with your team. I think fundamentally we'd all agree to that much.
80% of Lamar Jackson is roughly 130% of the quarterbacks they've been playing with.
At minimum. But even beyond that, even if it's not my limitations, but it's my concern for my re-injury or this being something that now all of my contract talks are, well, once he gets through rehab, I could see a world where that's a part of it. The one guy who I've used as my marker on this story so far has been John Harbaugh, though. The way he has talked about the injury at every turn has gotten more uncertain and a longer timeline, and more uncertain and a longer timeline, and then I don't even really want to talk about it anymore. That could be either thing. That could be that he is hurt worse than they realize, and they just haven't wanted to rule him out, just flatly. And alternatively, it could be, I thought he'd be back by now, but I'm not going to say this publicly at the moment because that doesn't do us any favors. So I don't... The crazy thing about it is I feel like there are probably half a dozen potential explanations for how they've gotten this far, and also maybe he'll just play. But to Bear's point, I'm not sure that Lamar Jackson playing his first game in what feels like forever with any physical limitations, even if it's flatly swelling in the knee, I wouldn't be afraid of that Bengals line,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think if he goes out there and plays, I don't think it then means that, okay, now the Ravens are going to win. If you're the Ravens, it's a matter of, does Lamar Jackson give us a better chance of beating the Bengals? What is the long-term risk? Because I do think the Ravens organization has to take that into account, because if they feel
also they want to sign him. They would not want his knee to explode in the playoff game. Sure.
Absolutely. So it's not a churn and burn. Right. This is the last time this guy's ever going to be on our team. Then let's just use whatever we can and then move on from him, because they don't have an answer at quarterback right now, unless they want to, trade a first rounder and a second rounder for Justin Fields and say, we're going to keep the same offense. Just going to go with Justin Fields now with a rookie, contract for a couple more years and be in the same boat we are with Lamar Jackson now, just 2 years from now, and a different quarterback that kind of plays somewhat the same style.
Maybe Jackson can hit Chase Claypool for a few more catches.
Maybe he could. Because it would also have to be, they would also have to have that in mind of what the long-term future of Lamar Jackson would be. If the swelling in the knee would not just be painful and have to be drained, that actually, yes, playing on this could cause long-term damage, could make it more chronic than acute, and, there's risk of further injury with this as you go into the offseason. Okay, Lamar, your camp, what are you thinking? What are the doctors saying? Ravens organization, John Harbaugh, coaches, what are you guys saying? What do you think? What's the best for everybody here? Can you go? It's a big decision if it's 50-50. I don't want to make it sound like if he's 50% of Lamar Jackson, but like a 50-50, this thing can go either way, that they're talking about it, the Ravens are talking about it, and they come to a decision. He practices, but they come to a decision on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon of is he active or not. We got to make a decision now. We are at the point to where now we have to turn in our inactives. What are we doing with Lamar Jackson? I'm curious as to what way they would go. And if Lamar and the coaching staff and the competitive spirit takes over and says, no, I'm playing, coach. I'm playing today. Yep, you're playing. Let's go win. Let's go see. That's the part of it that it is the playoffs. And I do wonder, because I don't think Lamar would hold himself out of a playoff game because, well, I'm about to get paid a whole lot of money. I don't believe that to be true. I believe what would probably be more likely is the people around him holding him back from playing because he wants to get out there and play in a playoff game. Because his reputation has been it's good during the regular season. Never could. Can't win a playoff game. Then he won one. Won. But I think he'd like to be out there with this is what you work for is to get to mid-January when now your legacy is defined by what you do in these games moving forward.
It makes me think of something Andy Reid said yesterday that was sort of interesting because it was kind of apropos of nothing. I think he was asked about Harrison Butker, and he mentioned this about Butker, but then he included McCole Hardman on this comment unprompted, which was that they'd had great communication about the injury and how they were feeling and just trying to all be on the same page about where they were succeeding and having their setbacks and all of that. And I don't know one way or the other, but I wonder if that's true for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I wonder if they both feel like, if both sides, quote unquote, being the team side and the player side, I wonder if they feel like they understand each other, if they're on the same page, if that communication has been good. Because if it's not, I think that's how you end up having your head coach look like he's out of the loop at the podium because he's saying something a month ago that in retrospect looks crazy because he never even really got close to being back in action on the sort of their original timeline.
A couple of weeks turned into now he's missed 5 games and may be done for the year if they lose on Sunday night and he doesn't play.
And again, there are plenty of explanations that could do that justice, but that's the thing that I keep going back to and wondering, just again, if they feel like they understand each other at this point, if there is a plan for both sides, or if it's just wake up every day and see how it's feeling, and we hope he wakes up feeling real youthful in his knee one of these days. He's just putting an ice pack or a heating pad on it and hoping for the best. I imagine it's much more involved than that, but I'm very curious to see how that settles, what we even find out about it after the year's over.
And wondering about like what can Lamar Jackson do if he hasn't played in a month and a half compared to what the Ravens did offensively with Anthony Brown over the weekend.
Yeah, Anthony Brown being dropped in warm turkey is also not great.
Cold turkey and warm turkey, either one, it's still, you have it once a year. It's overrated is what it is. But in that game, the Bengals win by 11 points. And so, you go, okay, well, they kind of controlled the game. They won by 11. Right, they won by 11 with a defensive touchdown, with a touchdown drive that was 15 yards off of an interception. The Ravens turned it over 4 times, and they kicked field goals of 26 yards and 27 yards in an 11-point game. Does Lamar Jackson make that difference? That's the question that if you're the Ravens, you have to be asking yourself of, did everybody except the one position that matters the most play well enough in this game to win against the Bengals? And then the Chargers lost to the Broncos. So therefore, had we won that game, it would be a coin flip. We might be playing in Baltimore right now. But the position that matters more than anything was awful.
Can't believe they made him throw the ball 44 times.
19 of 44. They had 2
he
interceptions.
Threw more than Joe Burrow.
He had a quarterback rating of 46.
One of those picks wasn't his fault, right? We talked about that yesterday. One of those picks wasn't his fault.
One of those picks was absolutely DeMarcus Robinson's
He
fault.
had just the one fumble. Yeah, okay. I mean, it was horrendous.
Yeah, it was bad. But it set up short fields for the Bengals. They also had the fumble touchdown that gave them at that point a 17-point lead. And again, they got down inside the Cincinnati 10-yard line and then kicked a field goal when they got there. It's an extra 8 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Lamar Jackson in the red zone benefiting your offense is not a big stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And and as we know, if you add and subtract points, the game goes exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
So if you just take the 7 points for the defense that they got off the board, that gives them 20-16. Now you add the 2 touchdowns instead of field goals, that's 8 points. That's 24-20. The Ravens won. That's all I'm saying.
Would have been that simple.
Everything would have been exactly the same, and that has taken away only 1 turnover.
Here's what won't change with Lamar Jackson is
What?
this is the list of leading receivers in that game for Baltimore.
Yeah?
Isaiah Likely, Sammy Watkins, Charlie Kolar, Demarcus Robinson. Yep, those are the Chiefs. Kenyon Drake, Tylan Wallace, James Prochet, Josh Oliver.
Yeah, but that's not that big of a deal because on the other sideline, that receiving core is roughly the same.
Yeah, you're right. Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Hayden Hurst, T. Higgins, Trenton Irwin, Samaje P. Ryan. I mean, yeah.
Sounds the same.
Flip a coin, really,
Sounds
right?
the
I
same
mean,
to
that's
me.
what the NFL wanted to do.
Well, here's what I've heard about Patrick Mahomes all year. Who cares about your receivers? You've got Travis Kelce. So why are we talking about Lamar Jackson's receivers when he's got Mark Andrews? Are we going to forget that Travis Kelce plays for the Chiefs? Just not even going to talk about that. Oh, look at the receivers that Patrick Mahomes has. He's got Travis Kelce. He's got a pretty good number one receiver. I mean, why are we talking about the Ravens receiving core when he's got Mark Andrews?
They didn't have Mark Andrews in this.
Mark Andrews
Just saying
has
in
not
general.
had a touchdown since week 6.
And whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? That's not Mark Andrews' fault.
No, it's not.
DeMarcus Robinson.
He's perfect.
It's easily on DeMarcus Robinson.
Maybe DeMarcus Robinson's fault.
We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will change the subject. We'll talk some baseball. Looking forward to this. Matt Quatraro, the 18th manager in Royals history, will join us here in studio, get his thoughts on this club, getting ready for spring training coming up and winter meetings and everything over, and what his assessment has been of the club since he took over as the newest manager of the Royals. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
What do you think of Greinke with the Chiefs? You like the deal, you like the signing, and what he can bring.
I can't get football out of his mind.
I think personally,
what did I say?
I think that Greinke should pitch for the Royals,
Did I say the
even
Chiefs?
though the Chiefs have a hole in their secondary. I think we should let him stay there.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards hanging out on this Tuesday. Very pleased to be joined by the newest manager of the Kansas City Royals, Matt Quatraro, joining us here in the Zone. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. You know, you heard the intro there. Would Greinke be a good enough player for the pitching for the Chiefs, or would it be better with Mahomes on the mound for the Royals?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see either one, right? But Mahomes has that baseball background, so we'll take it.
Yeah, he can probably throw a fastball. He's got a strong enough arm. Matt
I bet you
Quatraro's
Greinke can throw a football too.
I bet he could. I bet Greinke could probably do whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah,
whatever he wanted to do. It's golf. He's pretty good at that. I bet basketball, I bet he can just sit outside and knock down threes. Football, I bet he could put the ball wherever he wanted on a football field. Yeah, I think he's
a good
probably
athlete. Yep.
Yeah. Matt Quatraro is our guest. What's life been like for you since taking over as manager?
It's been exciting. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind. As much getting to know the job as moving here from Florida and putting all those things together. We intentionally did it in a quick time frame and a quick turnaround. So we brought some of it on ourselves, but it was important for me to get here as quickly as we could for our family and getting the kids ready to get into school starting the second half of the year, and also just to for me to get the lay of the land and for my wife to feel comfortable here before leaving for spring training. So, that part of it was big, and the job part of it, getting to know everybody in the office, on the team, hiring the rest of the coaching staff. So there's been a lot packed into these last couple of months, but it's really been good.
The family aspect, I think, is interesting with, your name has been brought up with different jobs over the last couple of years. So there's been this, idea that you are next in line, or it's going to be whether this year or next year, you were close to getting a job. Sometimes with the government and the FBI, and see they may have a go bag. Does a family have a go bag in case it was time to get the job?
No, a lot of consideration goes into that. You think about different jobs you interviewed for and what's best for your family and what kind of city can you envision raising your kids in and all that stuff. So Kansas City really met all of those things, and I'm excited about it.
And like the weather is nice.
You know what? I'm from upstate New York.
I know, that's true.
So
and you were in Cleveland, so
this feels a lot more like what I'm used to than living in Florida.
I like that. Matt Quatraro is our guest. So part of the time you said coaching staff, meeting with players, doing all that stuff. What's the feedback from the players been since you took over? I know winter meetings you were talking about just sort of trying to get in touch with people and maybe, a conversation with Salvi. But what's that been like as you've had some time to get in contact with different players?
Yeah, it's been overwhelmingly positive. It's been really exciting and invigorating. These guys know where they've been, as far as how many wins and losses the last couple of years, and that's not what how they envision themselves. And I think that's rightfully so. I mean, there's a real positivity and an optimism for what's coming in their careers, and I think that's been really exciting for me to hear.
Is it an advantage, disadvantage from your standpoint of players that might be more green in the major league level, that you've got 13 players that made their debut last year, that there isn't maybe any set in stone ways or expectations or feelings of, well, actually, this is how a manager needs to act when he comes into the clubhouse, or I'm looking for this, where they've had 1 year around Mike Matheny, that there isn't I've been in 10 years and I know what this manager is, that manager is. If you come in, sort of feels like almost kind of like a clean slate with even the players with only having a little bit of service time in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dangerous to just put a blanket statement out like that, because there's also some really good veteran players here too. And I think the one thing that I've been around a lot of good players over these last several years, and I think the one thing is the more reps they get under their belt, the more they understand that there isn't just one way to do it, either from the playing standpoint or from the coaching standpoint. So the guys I've talked to so far have been extremely open-minded. I've never done this before. They're all aware of that. And I'm not afraid of that or backing down from that. I think it is what it is. It's one of the things that you can't expedite experience. So I'm going to be learning a lot of lessons as I go, and I'm looking forward to learning those as much from the players as I am from anyone else, the front office or the staff.
Has it been, early on you're talking about how, crazy it's been, but has it been what you may have envisioned it when you were thinking about being a manager, wanting to do that, building sort of, you say so many different ways to do it, like figuring out what my path is going to be, how I'm going to do this. Okay, when I'm the manager, this is how I may do things, or this is what I think works from this guy. Early on in communicating and things like that, has it been sort of what you thought now that you're the guy, you're the manager, not just somebody that's, as an assistant coach or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best advice I've gotten over the years of if this opportunity were to come is just plan to be on the phone about 23 out of the 24 hours a day for the off season. So, I mean, that's very accurate. So that part of it's been very expected. But as far as like what my style is or how I envision myself as a leader, really it's day to day. You take every situation as they come up and you deal with them as you deal with any other situation in life, whether it's positive, negative, just normal interactions. So I don't set out every day to say, okay, here's my style and this is what I'm going to do today. It's just interacting with people and getting to know them.
Visiting with Matt Quatraro, Royals manager, day to day and different styles and things like that. When you were envisioning yourself being a manager, did you have ideas or names in mind of here's who my hitting coach or my pitching coach is going to be? And if you did or didn't, a guy like Brian Sweeney, does that a day by day, okay, this is a conversation with him. Okay, I really loved what I heard from him. Or is it something that's developed of, okay, this is a guy I'd love to have on my staff if I ever get a chance to be a manager?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, I think everybody in this game or most people in this game kind of keep lists of people they come across that I like this guy, this guy I think would fit this role well. Now, you don't always get carte blanche to pick everybody you want. You need permission from other teams. You have to have guys that are willing and want to do these jobs. And, so there's all kinds of different factors. But Brian is somebody in particular that he and I knew each other years ago when he lives in upstate New York too. And we used to work out together some in the off seasons when we were much younger and still playing. But so we have some familiarity with each other and, obviously coming from Cleveland and knowing what they're about, not only on the field but off the field, and the quality of person he is and the way he's going to connect with players was a huge thing for me.
Was there an importance of, from whether it's the, JJ or ownership and Mr. Sherman, of specific organizations? Because your background, Cleveland, Tampa, Brian Sweeney, Cleveland, the assistant pitching
Zach
coach.
Bove came
Thank
from
you, Minnesota. That's what I was thinking of. Is Twins organization. Is that just, did it just happen that way, or is there something to, hey, maybe we should find some people from successful organizations that have been there, done that?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. There's plenty of things. Just say an organization hasn't won in a few years, there's going to still be quality people working in that organization that have good ideas and know how to coach. So we didn't exclusively target Cleveland or Houston or the Dodgers or the teams that are perennially at the top of the league, but those people happen. You kind of put your diagram together and where things overlap. And Brian coming from Cleveland is a good thing. My familiarity with Tito and with Chris and how they run things there and what he's been exposed to, I think all things kind of lined up well there.
Matt Quatraro is our guest. Your coaching staff also is leaning towards more to the pitching side as maybe the hitting side. With that being the case, this organization, talking to people, the communication, trying to get to know the players. What about outside of just knowing them, but the players they are, like the talent that's there, what's in the organization? Pitching has been talked about a lot around here because there was an expectation of what the younger pitchers would do, what they could be, and there's still a hope there for some of that. What have you seen in your time with the organization now of what the Royals do have on the pitching side and what the future might be for this organization?
Well, I think to your first point, the reason that so much emphasis was put on the pitching is because that's what wins games in the big leagues. The best teams have the best pitching. There's no secret to that. On the hitting side, what was really nice to hear coming through the interview process was that JJ and the front office were very happy with the hitting coaches, Alex Zumwalt, Keone Duran, and at the time Mike Tozar, who's moved on to the White Sox. But that is very unusual to hear a front office say we're really happy with the hitting, because the way hitting is, the nature of hitting is nobody's ever completely pleased with hitting. You fail all the time. You fail an extremely high percentage of the time, and people are not generally happy. They want more homers. They want less strikeouts, and everybody does. But to have a hitting department in place that people are comfortable with and the players respect and like and want to work with is a real positive for us. Now on the pitching side, I think it's more than hope. I think there's a true belief that this quality of talented pitchers we have is going to emerge, and I think some different approaches to how to coach them will be helpful. But above and beyond, it's the talent of the player. These guys have to believe in themselves. They have to continue to work and grow. And it's hard to learn how to be a major leaguer at the major league level when you miss out on some minor league development time with the 2020 season being canceled and guys making huge jumps in levels. All those things are factors. But the confidence in these guys from within the organization is definitely there, and I think that's been really refreshing to hear.
Your managerial style, you talk about being fluid and sort of learning on the job, and this is your first time going about it as well. When you were introduced, you had said that you wanted to get feedback from the players. You wanted them to be honest with you, to tell you the things that they were thinking or feeling or whatever it might be around the organization. As you get feedback, does that shape how you go about dealing with players, or maybe hiring coaches, or looking at specific things, or being a coach that might be more focused on one area rather than maybe just generally a coach for a certain position? Does that shape you at all when you get feedback from the players of what their concerns or likes or worries might be?
Yeah, absolutely, because if you're taking the time to ask them and asking them to give you a genuine answer, and then you don't listen to it or act on it, then there's no point in having that conversation. And then they're going to see, all right, he's just placating me by talking to me because he's supposed to communicate with me, and that's not what I'm about. That's not what most good coaches or leaders are like. You genuinely take that feedback. Now the players, they need to understand that not every piece of feedback can be acted on, right? And they understand that. These are grown men. They've been through this. They're in the major leagues. They understand that because they don't like something, it can't always be changed. Now, when it comes to baseball, we were very responsive to what the players thought they needed as far as where to meet them on their journey as a pitcher or as a player, and the things that we need to grow on as an organization. Above and beyond all that, we have a vision. JJ has a vision. Mr. Sherman has a vision of the organization and where we need to go. And so we have our beliefs in what needs to be in place to make continual progress to put the team back at the top of the league.
Visiting with Matt Quatraro, one of the things that came up last year, and we wondered of what the future of the Royals organization would be in terms of leadership, and now we know what ended up happening. There were a couple of stories, reports of talking to players that there might have been a sort of a distrust in the organization with some of the coaches, that players were aware of former teammates that had success at a different organization. Have you heard any of that? Is that something that you found to be that is maybe a cleansing of, okay, let's just have a fresh start? Because that was a big part of last year of wondering what's going on behind the scenes, if there is something in the organization that it would just be better for all parties to, find a new voice, a new manager, new GM, scouts, whatever it might be, that if there is this sort of distrust that's lingering within the organization of younger players.
I really have not heard that, and so I really can't even give you a good answer because I don't know what you're alluding to or talking about. All I can say is, we're really focused on from today, from the day one of the job and moving forward. The people that were here before, Mike Matheny, is a great baseball person. And, I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he's done in the game, and coming in here as a first-time manager would be ridiculous for me to say he did this wrong or whatever. That's not what I'm about, and I have not heard one word of that from the players. I think they're really just looking forward to starting anew.
Matt Quatraro is our guest. It's always like, we always get into sort of this this struggle of, like, maybe struggle isn't the right word, of like, this is different, but it doesn't mean it's a criticism of the previous guy, right? Like, here's how I want to do it, but it doesn't mean that was wrong before. I know that you've talked about first pitch strikes. JJ Piccolo's talked about first pitch strikes. That's been discussed a lot with the Royals organization of first pitch strike percentage. And they've, the organization is continually ranked near the bottom of baseball in first pitch strike percentage. Saying versus doing. How do you get that? How do you get a team, an organization, to have that belief that we throw strikes? All right, you're gonna get ahead in the count. How do you do that? Because it feels like there's been an emphasis on first pitch strike percentage around here, but it hasn't translated to the field. How does that happen for an organization to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways. There's messaging, different, just hearing things from different perspectives. Just hearing a different, Brian's coming with, will have a similar message, but maybe a different way of delivering it. Different graphics, different ways to reach the players, whether it's verbally or through visuals or the way we practice too. There's different practice techniques. There's different ways to set up your bullpens, different ways to orient the plates, different ways for the catchers to set up, different targets, all those kinds of things. So, and not to say that those haven't been tried before. Some of this is incumbent on the players to just be better at it, and they know that. And then, so we work through the mental part of the game. And is it thinking positively, or putting what kind of thoughts go in your head? What's gotten in your way? What have been your obstacles? And reaching each player individually to see how one guy makes himself better, the next guy makes himself better, and collectively that makes us all better.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about even just catcher placement. If I think of first pitch strike percentage, I think specifically of a pitcher. I think of, okay, does he have the talent? Or if he's got the talent, does he have the belief in the talent to be able to go out there and put the ball over the plate and a strike, and not thinking that thing's going to be driven 400 feet behind him. But not even thinking of some of those small little details of, well, if the glove's over here versus over there, maybe it makes it easier for pitcher A. Might make it more difficult for pitcher B, which then goes to the point of how long it kind of takes to really get a feel for everybody in the organization, of knowing what will work, what may not work for individuals.
Yeah, well, and that comes into where we're not just telling them what to do. This is a conversation. It's, Brady Singer saying, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I think has worked, this is what hasn't, and that goes for every player down the line. And that's our job, to listen to them and then figure out the best position to put them in to make that adjustment if it needs to be made. The other point you made about being nervous about that ball getting hit 400 feet, well, that's going to happen. The pitchers that give up the most home runs are the guys that throw the most strikes. Like you look year after year, Garrett Cole gives up a lot of home runs. Every pitcher in the league would like to have Garrett Cole's career. Yeah. Right? So the guys, and there's a whole list of guys. The guys that are in the zone are going to give up home runs. The guys that walk guys give up home runs with guys on base. So that's where the, very rarely is it a good mindset of a pitcher to, well, let me be careful here and let me try to put this ball here. And because what happens is you end up making mistakes more, and then you have guys on base when you make those mistakes. So it's a little bit of a mindset, it's a little bit of technique, it's a little bit of mental, it's all of that wrapped into one.
Matt Quatraro is our guest, and some of that might be the analytics and utilizing some of that. And I know that in the opening press conference, you had said that most teams have the same amount of data. It's a matter of opening means of communication. It's one thing to have information, but you need to know what to do with it and an ability to utilize and put it into play. Again, this is where we get into not trying to criticize, before. Maybe it was just different. But do you think the analytics were being utilized in a way that could maximize the potential impact of players? And maybe is that part of the feedback that you guys have heard from players, pitchers, and things like that?
I mean, I think there's no doubt they used information, they use data. What I'm focusing on and what our staff is focusing on is fine-tuning how it was used with each guy. Again, there isn't a blanket, we do this with our pitchers. It's what does this pitcher need, what does that pitcher need, and that's not rocket science. Yeah. Everybody knows that everybody's different, but it's just the relationship that, we're going to do the best job we can at communicating with these guys. Some of them might want an encyclopedia every day before the game. Some of them might want a Post-it note, so that's our job to figure out where that where that line is. And as a team, the information, the data is infinite. It just never stops coming, right? I mean, you can dig down as deep as you want. Even on just public stuff, you can find data that you didn't even know existed every day. I can do that today and learn something that I didn't know yesterday. The players all have access to that too. So some of this is filtering it out for them, that let's concentrate on the most meaningful stuff for you to get better incrementally day after day.
Matt Quatraro is our guest. Where do you envision Bobby Witt, MJ Melendez, guys that have different positions. MJ Melendez catcher, but's played outfield. Bobby Witt shortstop, playing third base. Where do you envision if this team is winning a World Series? Where do you envision those guys playing? Is it catcher? Is it left field? Is it shortstop? Third base for Bobby Witt? I guess for you, does it matter?
Well, I can say this. I mean, I think we're going to best utilize our roster, use everybody to where we think they complement each other. You know, ideally, a player like Bobby that's a transformational type player and a premier position. Ideally, he plays short and can stay there for a long time. MJ has a lot of versatility, and I think we'd be foolish to not use that versatility to our advantage.
Who benefits the most with the taking away the shift?
It's a good question.
Maybe on your team.
Oh, as a player.
Yeah. I saw Salvi was talked about because he faced 76% of his at-bats were with the shift. But
I've
maybe
seen Salvi move the ball around the field pretty well. He's an accomplished major league hitter, so I think he does pretty much what he wants with the ball.
Maybe your Old Dominion, Vinny Pasquantino.
Yeah, my Old Dominion Monarch connection. There you go.
Matt, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Matt Quatraro, Kansas City Royals manager. Soren Petro, the program next.
Here's